Chapter 361, Explanation. The decision stunned almost everyone in the hall, Frodo most of all. Gandalf paused, pretending not to hear the first choked cry, and went on persuading the others. "No, child," he said. "Turn back now. Go home. You can spare yourself that pain, even if the outcome is unavoidable." "I will take the ring to Mordor," Frodo answered. The room fell silent. "But I don't know the way," he added. This time, Gandalf could not ignore him. He stepped forward and stood behind Frodo. "I will help you bear this burden, Frodo Baggins, so long as it is yours to bear. If I can keep you safe with my life, I will not hesitate to die," Aragorn said, kneeling on one knee and looking up at Frodo. "From this moment, my sword is at your command." Gandalf exchanged a quick look with Li Wei and Elrond. Li Wei raised an eyebrow. A consensus formed between the three of them. "And my bow," Legolas added, stepping forward. "And my axe," Gimli grunted, tapping the haft of the broken axe he still carried. "Though I'll need a new one." Boromir, who had been watching Frodo closely, was plainly moved by the hobbit's courage. "You have shouldered a heavy destiny, little one," he said. "If this is the council's will, Gondor will support it." "Hey, me too," Sam piped up, leaping forward. Elrond and Gandalf exchanged no surprise. They had seen him lurking nearby. Then, to everyone's mild amazement, Pippin and Merry tumbled out one after the other. "Don't you dare try to take Frodo without us," Pippin warned, "unless you tie us up and carry us off in a sack." Li Wei rubbed his hands, fighting the smile that threatened to break out at such a solemn moment. Elrond recovered his composure and asked, quietly but firmly, "Do you know what you are taking upon yourselves?" "A job?" Sam said. "An adventure?" Merry offered. The two hobbits looked at each other and, seeing nothing but straightforward honesty, nodded. They did not know, but they would not turn away. Elrond pronounced the number. 9 companions, he said. 10, if you insist on counting the ring-bearer separately. He inclined his head. "It is decided. You shall be called the Fellowship of the Ring." So the Fellowship was formed. Pippin pumped his fist. "Brilliant. Now, where are we going again?" Faces blanked. The council's task had been to choose the ring-bearers, and the last debate had been bitter. Elrond had argued that the hobbits were too fragile for the road ahead, and that Glorfindel's presence would better protect Frodo. Glorfindel was a powerful warrior whose arrival would be certain to draw Sauron's attention. Gandalf countered. "No," he said. "If we send forward someone as conspicuous as Glorfindel or Li Wei, Sauron will see and strike. He will hurl everything he has at the ring-bearer, and the Fellowship will be forced into open battle long before it reaches Mordor." "Then it is settled," Elrond agreed. He turned to Li Wei. "What say you?" "I have no objection," Li Wei replied. "Trust them. Their loyalty and friendship will reveal their strength." He leaned back, adding nothing more. The mission must move in the shadows. Li Wei would remain more open, more visible. Sometimes being too conspicuous was as dangerous as being hidden. With that, the council broke. The Fellowship went their separate ways to make ready. That night, Aragorn went alone to his mother's tomb to say his last farewells. "I am not yet ready for this," he admitted, voice low and unsure. "She brought you to Rivendell to keep you safe," Elrond said softly from behind him. "But she knew, as all did, you could not escape your fate." "The elves can reforge the king's sword," Elrond went on, "but only you have the right to wield it." "I do not want this power," Aragorn murmured. Years of wandering had stripped away some of his old certainty. Doubt shadowed him now. "Only you possess that blood," Elrond said. "It is irreplaceable. It is inescapable." Aragorn bowed his head and said nothing. Elsewhere in the house, Bilbo called Frodo into his room and pressed a small elven blade into the young hobbit's hands. "Try this," he said. "This was my old friend, Sting. See if it fits." Frodo drew the thin blade and held it in astonishment. "It's so light and so keen." "Oh yes," Bilbo chuckled. "When we were at the road, Li Wei told me he'd added a sharpening enchantment to it. Ever since, it's felt sharper than before. Elven work, you know." Bilbo's eyes twinkled. "And the blade will glow blue when orcs are near." "You should have seen Li Wei's other sword, Nemesis. He doesn't use it much now, but once when its edge was seen, the orcs would scatter. They knew, and they fled. It, too, was elvish work. Maybe it's from the same makers as this little blade." Bilbo went on, rifling through a chest. He took out a mail shirt of mithril and unfolded it before Frodo, then held up a small pile of golden apples. Give one to each of your companions, he said. Li Wei gave me more than enough. Frodo was speechless. No matter how long he had known Bilbo, his uncle still held surprises like a pocket full of secrets, an old hobbit's eccentric treasures suddenly as serious as weapons. Outside, Li Wei and Glorfindel were strolling along the path and happened to pass the open door to Bilbo's room. Li Wei saw Bilbo hand Frodo the short blade and raised his hand, pointing. "Do you know it?" he asked. Glorfindel stepped closer and peered. Though some distance away, he managed to see the sword. A small, wistful smile crossed his face, part nostalgia, part something deeper and harder to name. "I have seen it before," he said softly. "You're being mysterious. What's it called?" Li Wei pressed. "Sting," Glorfindel answered. Bilbo did not name it himself. Li Wei frowned at the elf's roundabout way of speaking. He had a guess. He had seen Glorfindel once with a short dagger when the darkness fell and had wondered at the time where it had come from. Curiosity tugged at him, but he let it go and shook his head. Some things, he thought, could wait. Chapter 362, Gifts. The reforging of Narsil would take time, and the Ring-Bearer party and the various allied contingents still had many preparations to make. After the council, they did not set out immediately. Instead, everyone lingered in Rivendell for a while, waiting until all was in readiness. There were a number of practical matters to settle first. The foremost concern was security in the surrounding lands. Elrond met Li Wei privately to discuss the situation. "I had intended to send Rivendell's scouts out to reconnoiter the borders," Elrond said, lifting a small teapot from the stone table and pouring Li Wei a cup of steaming tea. "But perhaps that will not be necessary." Li Wei smiled as he accepted the cup. "There is no need to worry about the road west of the Misty Mountains. Our people have supply points scattered through the wilds. Even if you started with nothing, a few calls on the road would bring aid and provisions before long." Elrond raised an eyebrow. "And if no one comes?" "Then shout a little louder," Li Wei said, grinning. "Or walk a little farther to the nearest outpost. Gandalf travels here often. He knows where our supplies lie." "That is reassuring," Elrond admitted, visibly relieved. Still, to guard against any unforeseen danger, Li Wei had both nearby towns increase their patrols, and he ordered a thorough reconnaissance of Eriador so that nothing slipped by unnoticed. With the security arrangements broadly settled, Li Wei turned to other tasks of his own. That afternoon, he made his way to the Hobbit's quarters. "Oi, you big fellow, come here." He found Sam in a quiet courtyard, gazing at the view. Sam hurried over and bowed slightly. "Hello, Lord Li Wei. May I ask what you want of me?" Li Wei laughed softly. "You're Sam, aren't you? Samwise Gamgee. I know you. Your father used to visit Bilbo often. I was at the Shire the year you were born. I even held you." He patted Sam on the shoulder and looked him over. "You've grown a good deal since then." Those few words, spoken with gentle familiarity, made the legendary stranger seem much nearer to Sam, like an old family friend. Hobbits loved that sort of thing. Names, kinships, how people were connected, and once they started up about it, they could chatter for hours. Sam listened, smiling. "Did my father ever mention that?" he asked. Li Wei nodded. "Aye. Once I visited Bilbo and caught him and your father sharing a treasured bottle of old wine. I had a cup as well. Small things tie the world together." Sam's face lit up. What a lovely fate. After their small talk, Li Wei reminded Sam why he had called him. "You and Frodo are close. You've come on this journey because you care for him. That sort of friendship is worth protecting." He drew from beneath his cloak a short sword, finely balanced and faintly luminous. It had the keen edge and subtle artistry of elven work, and Li Wei had set his own enchantments into the metal. The most notable was a potent ward against arachnids, arthropod slayer vi, meant to rend spiders with many times the blade's ordinary force. Along the fuller a line had been engraved in small script, "Forged by Li Wei, given to those who go on this quest." "I give this to you," Li Wei said. "It may help in a tight spot, though I rather hope you will never have to use it." Sam accepted the sword with solemn gratitude, bowing as he did so, and sheathed it with reverent fingers. Leaving Sam's home, Li Wei found Pippin and Merry. Agla, an elven friend Li Wei had known for some time, was with them, laughing and passing things around. "You're here, Li Wei," Agla exclaimed when she saw him. "I came to give these hobbits some useful things, like blades." Both Merry and Pippin already held blades that looked sharp enough, but Li Wei still took each sword in hand and threaded additional enchantments through the steel. After a few minutes of tinkering and a pleasant conversation with Agla, he moved on. Later he found Frodo walking with Bilbo, speaking quietly of the past years. There was little Li Wei could add in the way of equipment. Frodo already wore a mithril shirt of unparalleled quality and carried Sting, a blade more dangerous than its modest appearance suggested. Li Wei had no concerns about his gear. Instead, he gave what he could in other ways: company, reassurance, and a promise. Bilbo, old now, soon grew sleepy and went to bed. Frodo likewise began to feel tired. He looked at Li Wei, who still seemed refreshed and ready, and said, half joking, "I don't know if it's only my imagination, but it always seems you don't need to sleep." Li Wei considered the question. "Once in a while, I do sleep," he admitted, "but not as you do. I rest, but more for recreation than necessity." "How curious," Frodo replied, finding it hard to imagine for the moment. Li Wei's tone turned serious. "Travel brings surprises. I cannot promise to be with you every step of the road, nor can I give absolute guarantees, but I will do what I can, in my own way, to keep you safe." A faint clatter of hooves sounded beyond the house. At dawn the next morning, Li Wei rode away. There was still time before the main company set out, and it would have been asking too much to keep him idle in Rivendell. He had work elsewhere. West of the Misty Mountains, he had left the roads and water cities secured. Then he rode eastward over the high road to the lands on that side of the mountains. In Rovanion and the valleys of the river, all was in order. Outposts manned, watch kept close on Dol Guldur, and preparations were being made for a strike if need be. From the looks of things, Saruman must be growing impatient. Chapter 363, Mysterious Revelation. Saruman was safe for the moment. Elrond and Gandalf had reached that conclusion together in their earlier discussion. The Ringwraiths had chosen to capture and imprison him rather than kill him outright, which meant they needed him alive for some purpose. At least until that purpose was fulfilled, his life would not be in immediate danger. That did not mean he wouldn't suffer in other ways. After all, it was unlikely the Nazgul would invite him in for tea. Carltown. After arranging defensive measures against Dol Guldur along the Nanhe River bend, in Rovanion, and through the Anduin Valley, Li Wei took advantage of the fact that the forces gathered to assault Dol Guldur had not yet fully assembled. He traveled farther north to investigate Dane's Halls, a recently reclaimed dwarf colony in the Grey Mountains. Gloin had reported unusual movements there. From what Li Wei knew, the Sky Road was the best, safest route across the Misty Mountains, and the Fellowship of the Ring would likely travel that way soon. If possible, he wanted to clear any threats before they arrived. Roar. No sooner had Li Wei arrived than a deep, penetrating roar rolled over the endless snow-capped peaks. Something sinister stirred in the northern wastes. Li Wei considered the sound for a moment, then donned his flaming breastplate. As the mechanism engaged, the flame wings on his back unfurled with a crack like a firework, and he shot upward. He reached the summit quickly, but a whiteout snowstorm hid everything below. He descended, gliding down toward the mountain's foot. Boom! A massive impact slammed into him, snuffing out his flame wings. Before he could react, he found himself slammed into the mountainside, half buried among rock and ice. Some colossal creature had hit him. The temporary knockback resistance from the flaming breastplate was no match for that kind of force. "What was that?" Li Wei muttered, pushing aside rubble and crawling free. His runic shield was dented and flickering. When he looked up at the attacker, his expression turned to understanding. Just as he had suspected, something lived in the wastes beyond the ridge. A dragon, wingless and cold, stomped across the ice, its bulk a living avalanche. It had charged him full force as soon as he descended. Little Pink could do something similar in play, but Little Pink always held back, at most making Li Wei stumble or fall on his backside, never hurting him or triggering his shield. This dragon was different. It wanted to ram him to paste, then tear him open and devour him. The hit had hurt, even with the resistance buff protecting him. Without it, he would have been worse off. "Let's see what's really going on," Li Wei said, drawing his dragon flame steel greatsword. He cut through the blizzard and smashed the blade down into the charging dragon's skull. leaving the beast dazed and seeing stars. The impact shattered a stretch of ice behind the creature. Given Liwei's gear, a flightless cold dragon posed little real threat now. Even without the Star Ring's blessing, his equipment would have carried him through. Combat awareness and skill aside, he could trade blows with this creature and win. The dragon kept coming, but each clash with the greatsword shoved it back. The weapon's double knockback effect stopped it from advancing. Each blow felt like being struck by a Fangorn Ent slap, powerful enough to shatter rock or shear through metal. After several brutal exchanges, the dragon was exhausted and terrified. Its hide was lacerated, blood streaked the snow, and its bones rattled from the impact. If Liwei had aimed for a weak spot, thrusting into its mouth, for instance, it would have died instantly. As it was, the beast collapsed and soon lay reduced to salvageable materials, not even a single whole bone left. After collecting the dragon's remains, Liwei pressed deeper into the northern waste. He hadn't gone far before another obstacle appeared. The snow was uneven here. Fresh tracks cut across the field, not yet buried by the storm. Howl. A wolf's cry came from somewhere unseen. Faint black shadows flickered across the white, eerie, and insubstantial. In the distance, the sky glowed with a sickly, unnatural green that drew him on. On this ancient snow plain, untouched by men for what felt like 10,000 years, Liwei walked, his body radiating heat that melted the delicate ice crystals beneath each step. The path was long and monotonous. The endless white pressed and rippled at his thoughts. The cold here was extreme. He had no doubt that if he took off his dragon flame steel armor now, he would begin to lose health from the chill. Even the armor's internal heat was dulled by the atmosphere. It could barely melt the snow at his feet. By traveling over the frozen wastes, Liwei realized he had crossed beyond the interior of Middle-earth, moving ever closer to its borders. Along the way, aside from the unchanging expanse of white, monstrous signs multiplied, ghostly after-images of demonic wolves that had sprinted past, now charred and withered remains unable to move, scattered orc corpses frozen in place. Wherever he went, the land seemed to be cleaned of these ancient predators. As the ferocious creatures were cleared, the oppressive evil in the waste receded. The gray mist and blinding flurries in the sky began to thin. For a moment, Liwei thought it might be time to turn back. Then a different feeling rose within him. Not a force, but a revelation, quiet and insistent. It urged him onward, deeper into the wastes, as if something there awaited him and his aid. The impression had no specifics, no compulsion. It was simply real. It felt familiar, much like the revelation he had felt the first time he had opened the Hellgate, an impression from some higher presence. He wasn't obliged to follow it, but he felt he ought to. Hiss. A sharp, unpleasant hiss cut through the air. If such a sound had echoed over a city, panic would have spread. A figure near the ground seemed to startle when it noticed Liwei, glanced guiltily, and then fled into the distance. "An old trick to lure me in," Liwei said, though he didn't sound convinced. He gave chase anyway, because the direction the figure ran matched the premonition that had been guiding him. Chapter 364, Three-Sided Siege. Why isn't Liwei back yet? While Liwei was making his way toward the North Wasteland, Elrond and Glorfindel met Radagast the Brown at a Free City-States outpost west of Dol Guldur. Radagast, who loved animals, was one of the Free Force's most powerful sources of intelligence. All birds and beasts could be his eyes and ears. Even Saruman, despite his secret disdain, had to rely on him for information. The two sides had long agreed to gather here. A large force capable of holding back the evil creatures streaming from Dol Guldur had already been assembled, but one man was still missing. Liwei was supposed to be the main force of the relief and the army's commander. Without him, their plans could falter. Facing Liwei's prolonged absence, Elrond frowned. Where did he go? Radagast thought for a moment. The Great Eagles told me he went north, farther north than the Grey Mountains. Elrond's jaw tightened. Farther north than the Grey Mountains, there's only one place I can think of. The North Wasteland, Glorfindel supplied. That's no place for casual travel. What is he doing there? Radagast asked. I don't know. Radagast shook his head. The Great Eagle's sight can't reach beyond those mountains. There are still lingering evil forces there, and the climate is harsh. Almost no small animals live out that way. No birds, insects, or beasts can pass through, so I have no news. It seems he's not coming back for a while then. Elrond's face grew stern. Whatever the case, we can't wait. If we delay, events may spin beyond our control. An alarm flare and a shout cut him off. Guards looked up as great shadows moved at the forest's edge. Some beasts padded on the ground while others climbed the trees, shaking branches as they went. "They dare to attack!" someone barked. The deputy commander, Li Wei's second-in-command, was about to lead men out when the attackers shifted direction. They did not charge the outpost in the Anduin Valley. Instead, they turned south and streamed away. "That's not right," the deputy commander muttered. He saw the intent immediately. That direction led to the two fortifications at the bends of the Behe and Nanhe rivers. Those forts were crucial transit hubs. They were not as stout as River Valley City or the roadside fort, but they were not easy prey. Even if the creatures emerging from Dol Guldur, orcs, ologs, spiders, and wargs, were 10,000 strong, they should not be able to take both fortifications. In past conflicts, such armies had been little more than cannon fodder. But years under Li Wei's tutelage and hard-won experience had taught the deputy commander that the orcs' masters were not fools. They did not launch seemingly senseless assaults. Such attacks had to be diversionary or part of a larger plan. An eagle's cry split the air. Radagast looked up as a great eagle swooped down with fresh news. "As I feared," he said. Not only was Dol Guldur on the move, a vast army from Mordor, marching west from the Black Gate along the Brown Lands, was advancing toward the same river bends, with ringwraiths circling above. It was meant to be a pincer. Then the great eagle hesitated. "Wait, what is it?" Elrond asked. "A powerful orc army has slipped past Rohan's patrols along the Fangorn border and reached the North Bridge," the eagle reported. A three-pronged attack, Dol Guldur on one flank, Mordor on the other, and a third force cutting in from beyond Fangorn. Elrond, Glorfindel, and the deputy commander exchanged looks. "It appears Li Wei's territories are in trouble," Elrond said. "We cannot stand idle." Elrond stepped forward. Glorfindel rose as well. Mordor had timed this carefully. Reinforcements were present here now, few in number, but potent. Any ringwraith daring to approach even a step would be bold indeed. "The enemy is larger than we expected," the deputy commander said. With Li Wei still absent, the deputy commander recalled the instructions Li Wei had given before leaving and made his decision. He would not wait. Leading their forces, he, Elrond, and Glorfindel set off on a detour to reinforce the Nanhe and Behe river bends. At once, the whole of Rhovanion began to mobilize. In a few days, the unrest spread and every territory east of the Misty Mountains went to war. Meanwhile, in the North Wasteland, Li Wei followed a pull in his chest. His pack's fireworks were nearly spent when he finally descended from the sky and reached his destination, an enormous, bottomless pit. He could drop a stone and hear no sound. It plunged so deep that its depths were only a void. Along the faint rim, things crawled upward. A primeval malice rose from the pit and slammed into his mind like a blow. For the first time in a long while, a fighting spirit flared inside him. His muscles tightened. He drew the Dragonflame's steel greatsword and swung. Evil things crawling from the pit were struck down and burned. They tumbled back into the darkness with no sound at all, as though swallowed by the void. This could not be his long-term solution. He sheathed his sword, grabbed a pickaxe, and began to mine the rim and work the ground. Half a month later, the pit's mouth was sealed. A stout new fortress crowned the spot. Dozens of iron golems patrolling its ramparts, standing sentry through wind and snow where no one else ventured. "That will hold for now," Li Wei muttered. He had intended to make more iron golems, but he simply did not have the iron. Even the pumpkins he harvested had to be grown on site. Thump, thump, tapping came from beneath the fortress. Li Wei knew that surface suppression was not enough. Taking a steadying breath, he clenched his fist, lit a torch, and entered the mouth of the pit to go down. No one could say how long he walked. The North Wasteland's snowfields above were blank and white. The deep pit beneath was pure black. Only the path under his boots and the torchlight before him existed. He was solitary light in a place of absolute gloom. Countless unseen eyes tracked him, then drew back, some from fear, some from instinct, hesitating to strike. The descent stretched on and on until his feet began to go numb. Just as weariness began to weigh him down, a faint glow appeared far below, a light coming up from the depths of the earth. Chapter 365, The Deepest Evil, the Ultimate Malice Light? No, that wasn't right. Li Wei had drunk a night vision potion and stared into the gloom. It wasn't light. Creak, creak. The sound of something sharp striking stone echoed through the cavern. Li Wei focused and saw giant white spiders, their bodies crusted with frost, gnawing on a pile of tattered black armor. The armor's style looked familiar. Ringwraiths? He frowned. The armor was indeed the kind ringwraiths wore, but the suits were empty shells, chewed apart. No spirits remained. Ringwraiths had been here once, but these creatures showed no mercy. They hadn't spared even the wraiths. Whoosh! The frost spiders must have sensed him. They scuttled away from the broken armor, turned as one, and fixed their cold, hungry eyes on Li Wei. Their stares were pure malice, ravenous, and unashamed. "Come eat this," the look said. Li Wei drew his dragonflame steel greatsword. The spiders' jaws proved no match for it. With sweeping blows, he soon reduced them to a pile of rot. "What exactly is this place?" he muttered. Deeper into the darkness, something moved again. A black shape lunged. Li Wei intercepted it with his blade and finished it with 2 more strikes. "Awoo!" The dying howl grated on his nerves. What had that been? He prodded the charred corpse. It had been so fast he hadn't seen it clearly, and now it was burned to a crisp. Still, whatever creature it had been would leave a telltale drop. Bones for orcs or ogres, spider eyes for spiders, something to identify it. Li Wei froze. His scalp prickled. He stood rigid, stunned. Elf! Roar! The cry had drawn a host of monsters, orcs, ogres, frost-mutated spiders, and several demon wolves emerging from the dark. Scram! Irritated, Li Wei lashed out. The ensuing fight was brutal and one-sided. He cleared the area with ruthless efficiency. When the dust settled, he paused, hand on his sword, and held down one last frenzied creature. This was the one that had dropped the bone. "Let me see what you really are." Tormented, suffering elf. Li Wei went quiet. He looked at the creature in front of him and felt a profound, indescribable malice. It was an elf, but not as any elf should be. More than one such being had toiled in these caverns. An ancient evil clung to them like maggots to bone, refusing them death or escape, forcing them to wander the sunless depths in endless torment. Their nails grew long and filthy, their skin turned gray and coarse, their bodies stooped, hair falling away. In that unending dark, they grew fearful of light and went mad. "Be freed." Li Wei struck hard. The blade ended the elf's suffering cleanly. The tormented soul slipped free of its broken body and, as Li Wei had always believed, returned to the western Holy Lands, to the halls of Mandos, to be healed and kept apart from the living. Li Wei drew a deep breath and steadied himself. Now he knew where he was. Faction unlocked, Utumno. Long before the First Age, in the years of the trees, Morgoth had mocked the firstborn and taken many elves captive, imprisoning and daily tormenting them in his fortress. The powers waged war to free them. Morgoth was defeated and bound. Utumno's walls were shattered, but many evil minions remained, hiding in deep caverns and waiting for their master's return. Most of the elves had been rescued, yet a number had never been found. The wise in Valinor feared some missing elves still wandered Utumno's dark hollows alongside the monsters, and for various reasons it was hard to search every cave. "Come, all of you," Li Wei whispered. "I will set you free, and I will send you back." He pressed onward. Wherever he went, the monsters were cleared, and the deranged elves he found were released. The purpose of his journey here became clear. After a long, single-minded march, he felt the air warm and a tremor run through the ground. A broken stairway revealed old black stone beneath melting ice. Thud! The earth under his feet began to quake. He took a breath and raised his rarely used shield to brace himself. He'd felt this before. It was coming. Boom! The ground buckled. Stone exploded outward. His shield shattered under the blast and tossed him back. He managed to hold his greatsword up to take some of the blow. With a thunderous impact, he slammed into a wall. Through the tear in the rock, he saw a giant winged figure, wreathed in flame, and a host of hideous creatures beside it. Li Wei's mouth curled into a grin. "Come on." A voice full of fighting spirit echoed down the caverns and traveled far. It's one thing that Li Wei wasn't found. Saruman's failure to rescue him was understandable, But how did Glorfindel get dragged into this? Gandalf complained to a great eagle in Rivendell. The eagle preened and said nothing. It was only a messenger and could not meddle. Alas, Gandalf sighed, we should trust Elrond. Through the great eagle, it had been said, Elrond would return to oversee the expedition's matters before the ring-bearer set out. The woodland realm will not stand idle, Legolas, nearby, added. My father will surely send troops to aid the attack on Dol Guldur. Yes, Thranduil will act, I'm sure, though I remain worried, Gandalf admitted. The string of serious events had worn on the old wizard. If that region breaks into war, will our route remain safe? Never mind that for now. Gandalf changed the subject. Our agreed departure time approaches, and I did not expect so many absences. I didn't either. Too many unexpected events, Legolas said, brow furrowing. The great eagle, message delivered, spread its wings and left. Gandalf watched it go, thoughtful. I understand Elrond's position. He'll be back in a few days. But Leeway's whereabouts are still a mystery. He would not simply disappear without cause. Something urgent must have held him. What could be so important? The elf and the wizard wondered. Scouts had ridden hard across neighboring lands and found no sign of Leeway. The great eagle reported he had gone to investigate in the northern waste. After that, silence. Before he left, Leeway had only issued a few instructions to assist the ring-bearer team and offer support when needed, leaving other decisions to local leaders. A few days later, Elrond returned, and Gandalf exhaled in relief. Do not worry, Mithrandir. Lady Galadriel has pledged Lothlorien's aid in an assault on Dol Guldur. Thranduil will lend forces as well. I left Glorfindel to help there. Mordor's schemes will not prevail. That is for the best, Gandalf said, finally comforted. With that assured, I can return to arranging matters for the expedition. Elrond dismounted and asked about recent affairs. The king's sword had been reforged and named Anduril, Flame of the West, by Aragorn. The 9 Walkers, the Fellowship of the Ring, were prepared. Though many had their own duties and events rarely line up perfectly, all that remained was to do what they could. Precisely so, Elrond agreed. On a clear morning, the Fellowship announced its departure. Elrond declared, The Ring-Bearer's journey to Mount Doom begins now. As for the rest of you, you are bound by no oath. How far you go is up to your own will. Oaths can bind men to deeds, but they can also bring great sorrow. Elrond felt this deeply, so he required no vow. Farewell, and remember your mission. May the blessings of the elves, men, and dwarves, and all the free peoples of Middle-earth be with you. The ring-bearer set out, and the Fellowship followed. They would each face their own trials. Chapter 366, A Warning from the Cold Wind. The 9 who bore the ring set out from Rivendell, and Elrond watched their retreating figures with a long, troubled sigh. The world was in turmoil. No place could escape it. Even the free city-states, usually peaceful and rarely touched by evil, were not spared. In the past, Sauron would not have dared to covet those lands, but the moment the leader of the free city-states departed, the Nanhi River Bend erupted into war. Thranduil tried to lead his people to aid their neighbors, but as soon as he stepped out of the forest, he ran into fierce orcs attacking the nearby town of Carl, and ringwraiths circled overhead. Beorn's son brought his men to face the invaders on the ground, while the great eagles dove from the mountaintops, clashing with ringwraiths and enormous flying beasts to distract them and keep them from harrying the humans below. This was a 4th wave of attack, and no one could say where this OK army had come from. They were not from Dol Guldur, nor from Rohan or Isengard. Even Thranduil had no information. It was only when Galadriel arrived that the source of the 4th army was revealed, Moria. The orcs there had been so terrorized by Leeway's slaughter that they were nearly wiped out, on the verge of extinction. Yet Sauron had kept some alive in secret. When the forces of light were strong, they lay low and did not dare to strike ordinary travelers. But at the command of their master, they resurfaced and were discovered by the border guards of the Golden Wood. Galadriel, troubled, also turned her sight northward toward the wasteland beyond the northern human realms. In the turmoil, she had a premonition and acted on it. In a relatively quiet reception hall in the middle of the war zone, she met Thranduil and Glorfindel, who had come to offer support, and a commander of the River Valley Army from the Free City States. The three elves and the commander held a small conference to discuss local events and the repeated delays in rescuing Saruman. The River Valley commander mostly listened. He was there to coordinate the elves' actions according to the message Li Wei had sent. Galadriel spoke first. I sense that the legend of the North is carrying a burden that should not have fallen to him, and that our long-lost kin are returning. Kin? Thranduil asked, mildly puzzled. He was the youngest of the three, just over 5,000 years old, while the other two had lived through one or two earlier ages and were greater in power. Both had once walked in the light of the two trees. Standing near them, one almost felt no need for lamps, so radiant were they. That was the age when I was born, Galadriel explained. Many elves were captured and tormented by Morgoth. Even though Morgoth was defeated and his stronghold breached, many of those captured remain missing to this day. I have a premonition that Li Wei is seeking them in a deep, distant place, freeing them and guiding their return to Valinor, she continued. A noble deed, Glorfindel breathed, admiration clear in his voice. Thranduil nodded as well, though for him the feeling was less intimate. He had not witnessed those captures firsthand and only recognized the event from lore. The River Valley commander, who had been silent, felt a small relief. So Li Wei had merely gone far away to settle some matter. Nothing terrible had happened. He realized the message might have been meant for him to carry so that the territories would not worry unduly. Elves, every one of their actions was layered with meaning and required thought. The commander understood that now. But then Galadriel fell into a sudden, frozen silence. A flicker of doubt passed over her face. Outside the dark bulk of Utumno's fortress, Li Wei exhaled and blew a sleeve of flame aside. The battle had been fierce. Huge sections of the outer walls lay smashed and blackened. His runic shield had broken and reformed too many times to count, draining and renewing his viz. Without vis recovered from slain enemies, the staff's reserves would have long since been exhausted. He brushed stubborn embers from his cloak, rose from the enormous, energy-drained corpse of a Balrog, and surveyed the wreckage. That was dangerous, he said to himself. A pack of strange giant beasts had surged forward, driven on by a Balrog. In the cramped corridors of the fortress, with little room to maneuver, the beasts blocked his path, and their combined assaults had nearly overturned him several times. Yet his skill carried him through. None of the giant beasts on the ground remained whole, and the Balrog's wings beneath his feet were shredded. After felling the creatures and wounding the Balrog, it tried to flee, but Li Wei would not allow it. He drew his dragonbone bow, its enchantment of power V humming, loosed dragonbone arrows, and brought the creature down. Then he finished it with his greatsword, severing its enormous wings, wings that had seemed half substance, half flame. The Balrog finally lay as a thing of flesh and shadow. The single Udun flame it dropped, even with looting bonuses, left him a little disappointed. This Balrog had felt weaker than the one he had fought in Moria, and not as formidable as the one he had personally slain before. Perhaps it was an illusion. Li Wei himself was far stronger than when he first met such a thing. Still, the sense of power was different. He searched the fortress thoroughly, clearing every shadow he could find until he reached the heart of the structure. He forced open a stout door and entered a surprisingly well-preserved chamber. Apart from the chamber itself, there was only a dark, downward passage set at its center. Stairs that seemed endless plunged into the earth and then simply stopped, broken off mid-drop. Far below the stairwell yawned a void. It looked bottomless and sent a chill through the heart. Should he go down? The thought rose, and with it came a sudden, unmistakable warning. It was not a vision, but a presence, a cold wind that traveled from the surface down into the earth, stroking his face and rustling his hair, carrying information with it. A warning from Manwë, the kindly, merciful lord of air and winds, the guardian of the world. Beneath the deep pit lay concentrated malice, a fallen dark realm shrouded by a lingering will of evil that hid it from the outside, even obscuring the perceptions of the Valar. Li Wei absorbed the meaning at once. The Valar were bound by law from direct interference in mortal affairs, and their dwelling was set apart from Arda by Eru. That separation had now been reinforced by another barrier. Should he descend, even the Valar might be unable to reach him. What followed would depend entirely on his own resources. Some Valar might topple mountains or sunder seas with a single blow, but that did not make them superior in every way, especially where cunning or certain ancient evils were concerned. He smiled. A new challenge. I like it. Then he leaped into the void. Instantly, a wind wrapped around him, a legal protection that kept him from falling or striking the stairs as he plunged deeper. I can no longer perceive him, Galadriel said quietly, staring northward, lost for a moment. What do you mean? Thranduil asked. Glorfindel, whose experience was greater, answered simply, Li Wei has left this world. Chapter 367. Gandalf is a bit grumpy. His words stunned them. Leave this world? The River Valley commander, who had been listening in, felt his mind go blank for a moment. Did he understand leave this world the way it was meant? For humans, that was the polite way of saying someone had died. It softened the blow, but it still meant death. What does that mean? He asked. Thranduil raised an eyebrow. Even among elves, their own riddles could be confusing. Lady Galadriel answered with cool honesty, admitting her limits. That is beyond my ability, she said. Thranduil turned to the commander. There's no need to guess about things we cannot see. What matters is the present. The commander swallowed, forced down the turmoil in his chest, and nodded. I will cooperate with the operation. Elsewhere, trouble flared again. In Dorwinion, a modest winery owner noticed the upheaval in the eastern regions and rubbed his temples. How many years has it been, and now troops again? He muttered. He threw a cloak over his shoulders to hide his face, mounted a horse with no retinue, and rode west along the Wine Road, a road recently refurbished by craftsmen from the Free City States. The incidents had become more frequent. For elves, a few decades was little. For humans, it was a long stretch. Still, things had changed. In days gone by, no one would have dared travel that road unguarded. Lately, even some bold human peddlers risked it alone. The owner sighed. This is a headache. West of the Misty Mountains, on a windswept plateau, Gandalf sat smoking his pipe, lost in thought. Behind him, the clang of steel and laughter rang out. Boromir had been showing Pippin and Merry sword techniques, but the two hobbits were up to mischief. They tricked Boromir and sent him sprawling. For the Shire! Take him down! They cried. The hobbits pounced, pinning Boromir. He struggled, then gave up with a roar of laughter. The Gondor captain was easily drawn into their game. Beneath his authority, he was genial and good-humored. Aragorn watched the group and smiled. Boromir wasn't difficult to get along with. Despite his heavy responsibilities, he was down to earth. That weight, however, was his greatest weakness. Aragorn rose and tried to pull the hobbits apart. They turned their trick on him, and he, too, flopped to the ground. We cannot go south, he heard Gandalf say suddenly, cutting off their play. Gandalf's single sentence sobered the company. The people of the Black Land are of uncertain loyalty, and Saruman's forces are nowhere to be seen. That's a major hidden danger. Gimli suggested, why not take the Sky Road to the north? Gandalf blinked, then gave a dry little nod. Indeed, a brilliant suggestion, Gimli. I almost forgot that obvious northern shortcut that everyone already knows about. He spoke to Gimli, but his gaze was elsewhere, which puzzled the dwarf. How did I offend him? Gimli muttered under his breath. Gandalf rose. All right, we'll try the northern route. Everyone, prepare to depart. With any luck, we'll remain under the protection of the Free City States all the way, and we'll see beautiful, ever-changing scenery. And if luck's not on our side? Pippin asked, always quick to cut to the heart of things. If not, I'll throw you off the road myself, and you can see what your jinxing gets us. Pippin looked sideways at Gandalf. He seems in a foul mood. Wizards are like that, eccentric and unpredictable, Merry whispered. Just be patient, Aragorn said. Maybe he didn't sleep well. A nap will fix him. Pippin nodded solemnly and hurried after Gandalf, leaving the earlier tumble behind. The company headed north along the high Sky Road, peering at the view. I've never climbed this high before, several hobbits exclaimed, leaning on the railing and staring down in exhilaration. The panorama below would remain with them. Along the way, iron golems patrolled fixed routes by the roadside, which added to the novelty. Even Gandalf's mood lightened as they walked. He chatted and shared stories and knowledge. This road is a pleasure to walk, he said. I've traveled it many times since it was built. Most journeys here are leisurely. Look ahead, Gandalf interrupted, pointing. They were at the Misty Mountains. Far ahead, the tunnel of Halfway Town was warm with light, countless yellows spilling out from the rock, people moving about within. This is one of the Sky Road's main hubs, Halfway Town, Gandalf explained. It used to be a goblin cave until Li Wei led an effort to clear it out. They reshaped the interior, flattened it, and built it into what you see now. Afterward, Halfway Town grew. Merchants and travelers pass through in great numbers every year. Many settle here. It's lively and prosperous. How amazing, Frodo said, eyes wide at the idea of a town cut into a mountain. That's because you haven't seen a dwarf kingdom, Gimli replied with pride. Erebor, or the halls reclaimed in the Grey Mountains, they're on a grander scale. The underworld, as outsiders call our halls, is far larger. I've heard of it, Frodo said. Bilbo told me about the Lonely Mountain, Erebor. Gimli brightened. Your uncle Bilbo has sense. He was called a friend of the dwarves long ago. My elders still speak of that brave hobbit. But, Gimli hesitated, and then added with gravity, even Erebor is only part of dwarf glory. Are there dwarf places bigger than Erebor? Frodo asked. Gimli answered slowly, the name heavy on his tongue. Moria. Chapter 368, The Decision. Moria, the great wonder of the dwarf race. A wonder? Not only the hobbits were curious. Boromir, too, looked up. He had been raised in Gondor and taken to the front as soon as he came of age, facing the Witch King in battle time and again. He had never seen an underground dwarven kingdom, and had hardly ever seen a dwarf. Yes, a wonder, Gandalf said. A wonder no less than the roadside fortress, or even the City of Water. Even if only empty, dust-filled halls remain today, its grandeur is beyond what most folk can imagine. Precisely. Gandalf is absolutely right. Gimli agreed at once, already picturing it, his brief annoyance at Gandalf's earlier sarcasm forgotten. Most dwarves were quick to anger and quick to forgive. When we reclaim Moria, it will surely regain its former prosperity. Balin used to speak of it to me often, Gandalf went on. For decades he spoke of it in bits and pieces. I have always advised caution. There are still hidden dangers there. To go now would risk the same fate that befell those before us. But when will it be possible? Gimli asked, earnest. Every dwarf in the Free City states longed to reclaim their ancestral halls. Gandalf looked at him, sighed, and said, Soon, Gimli. Don't be impatient. It will be soon. You will see it in your lifetime. Yes, you will see it. They talked as they walked, but soon an uproar ahead drew them all. They had reached Midway Town. It's lively. Shouldn't we find somewhere to rest? Sam said. I'm hungry. Me too, Merry and Pippin chimed in. Even Gandalf agreed for once. There's a Midway Tavern over there. We might check it out. Fantastic! Pippin punched the air, about to run forward, but shouting nearby held him back. A crowd of Midway Town residents had gathered, excited and loud. Voices echoed through the tunnel. Quiet! Quiet! The mayor climbed to the highest point and signaled for silence. One by one, the shouts died away. As the elected leader, the mayor commanded wait. His authority was enough to still the throng. The members of the fellowship were drawn in, pressing forward to hear what the mayor would say. Gimli hopped impatiently, nudging the folk around him. Can someone tell me what's going on? I can't see, he demanded. Boromir kindly offered, Shall I lift you up, my good dwarf? Don't you even think about it, Gimli snapped. No thanks, I'd rather climb myself. A moment later, he followed the example of a few hobbits and clambered up a lamppost. That's better, but speak quickly. This lamppost is hard to hold on to. Don't get ahead of yourselves. Nothing is decided, the mayor called. He stepped forward, voice ringing out. Even what the elves say is not necessarily the whole truth. We must see for ourselves and act for ourselves, not be swept away by a single rumor. That's right, Gimli yelled from the lamppost. The crowd glanced up, then forgave him when they saw he was a dwarf. We mustn't blindly obey the elves. Legolas shot Gimli a look that made the dwarf feel like ducking. Gimli only added hastily, So can someone tell me what the elves said? Every member of the fellowship stiffened, ears pricked. The townspeople fell silent for a long beat. Finally, a man nearest Gimli spoke up. They say our supreme leader, the great legend Li Wei, has left this world. What? Gimli lost his grip and tumbled off the lamppost. For a moment, no one could comprehend it. Frodo looked up, hoping Gandalf would deny it. Gandalf only shook his head, as if he had feared this. Aragorn hurried closer, voice tight. You knew? No, Gandalf said quietly. Rumors must be rumors, Gimli mumbled. I'm afraid it's not a rumor, Gimli, Gandalf replied. Since we set out, I cannot sense him. Gimli's head bowed. So this was why Gandalf had been so heavy-hearted. A townsman peered at Gandalf and said, You are the Grey Wanderer, Gandalf the Grey. If even you say it, another muttered. Don't leap to conclusions. Absence is not the same as death, Gandalf said. Where was Li Wei last heard of? Far to the north, in the wastelands, the mayor answered. Gandalf was taken aback. The fellowship fell silent, listening as the townsfolk argued among themselves. Some spoke of marching on Mordor, seizing Sauron to force answers about Li Wei. Others scoffed. Nonsense. The armies of Mordor number over 100,000. The Black Gate is iron and stone. Do you know the cost of breaking through? Do you know how ferocious the creatures inside are? We know, Mr. Wizard, said one, and we have seen them. Gandalf listened a while longer, then frowned. I advise you not to travel beyond this point. Stop here and turn back. At his words, murmurs rose. He ignored the warnings and strode to the mouth of the tunnel. The rest followed, their appetite for rest gone. They reached the tunnel's end and looked out, not at bright sunlight, but at a dark sky where great eagles clashed with monstrous winged beasts. One let out a scream that made everyone look up. Ringwraiths rode some of those beasts, terrifying shapes that rode and circled, causing panic on the ground. Along the sky road and the walls below, midway defenders lined the railings. The River Valley commander led men in desperate combat. Orcs swarmed below in chaotic waves. The shriek sounded again. Frodo's heart clenched, and the spot where the ring lay against his breast burned with cruel pain. One of the ringwraiths seemed to sense something. He turned his mount and dove straight for the tunnel mouth. Shoot arrows! Arrows met him in a hail. The wraith was forced upward to avoid the volley. It's my people, Legolas cried, spotting the elven archers coming to reinforce them, woodmen from the woodland realm. Boromir and Aragorn hustled the 4 hobbits back behind them. Doesn't anyone care about me? Gimli protested as he ran. I can carry you if you wish, Legolas offered. Don't even think of it, Gimli barked over his shoulder. I can run on my own. Another wraith swooped down. The elves loosed more arrows, but a new force had arrived, the Midway Town defenders. Shoot! A second rain of shafts shot up, forcing the wraiths back. Many human archers' hands shook from fear of those riders, but anger hardened their grips. Some fierce, blind fury made them stand and fight despite the dread. The wraiths were surprised to find these folk not cowed. Hidden in the tunnel, everyone's heart hammered. The 4 hobbits had never seen such a scene and were terrified. Frodo was worst of all. He writhed, in agony not only from fear, but from the ring's torment. Boromir, anxious for the hobbits, said, We can't stay here. That wraith must be linked to the ring somehow. Frodo is in terrible pain. This path is not safe. There are more orcs down there than at the crossroads, Gandalf said gravely. He considered for a moment and then added, We could go down from here, slip south under cover of the Free City's forces, and then... Before he could finish, there was a thunderous bang to the south, and a glow stained the clouds. Dol Guldur. Gandalf's face tightened. If Dol Guldur had stirred, the road through Rovanion was no longer secure. Boromir watched the clashing armies and frowned. This battle is larger than any I've seen. The Free Cities seem to have at least 20,000 defenders. The enemy must be twice that. Mordor has committed much of its force here. They are pressing hard, but the attack grinds on. Even if they continue for months, it may gain little. This is our chance, Boromir said, turning to the others. If Mordor has thrown its main force here, Gondor may be left thinly defended. We could seize the Isen River crossing and make for Gondor, accept my father's aid. No, we cannot go that way. Aragorn's voice was firm. He understood the peril beneath Boromir's plan. Even if they reached Gondor, the consequences could undo all they sought to protect. Gandalf nodded agreement. Then what other routes remain? Gimli demanded. Gandalf sighed. Destiny pressed in. We can turn back and use the City of Water as cover. There is still a route the enemy cannot easily discover, but whether to push onward, seek other paths, or change course altogether must be decided by our ring-bearer. Clang, clang, the Midway defenders, now in armor, mustered and poured out in squads. The iron golems, drawn by the commotion, clanked toward the Sky Road's edge. eyes on the orcs below and the wraiths above. In the sudden hush, all eyes turned to Frodo. The decision rested on the Hobbit. Chapter 369, Return. Take the path near the City of Water. Tormented by the ringwraith's screams and roars, Frodo made his decision. The relatively hidden underground route near the City of Water could only mean Moria. He didn't know the place in detail. He chose it mainly because of the name. The City of Water had been built under Leeway's guidance, and the thought of that gave him a strange comfort. Moria near the City of Water felt more trustworthy than the Rohan Gap or Gondor's approaches. Boromir winced but quickly recovered. He had promised Gondor's support to the Ring-Bearer, and he intended to keep it. Pride could wait. They pressed south along twisting roads, moving quickly past Roadside Fort, crossing through the City of Water, and arriving at the Eregion outpost. No trouble nearby. Everything's as usual, the ranger at the outpost reported. The journey from the Misty Mountains to this point had been protected by the Free City-States, and so far it had gone smoothly. Gandalf's face clouded as he remembered the message delivered by a bird before they left. Mordor has thrown no less than 50,000 troops at the Nanhi River Bend and the Anduin Valley. They had at least 3 ringwraiths with them. It's insane. He wouldn't like what the Free City-States will do once they respond, Aragorn said. In Midway Town, the people had urged an invasion of Mordor, even to capture Sauron and force him to reveal Leeway's whereabouts. Gandalf, who had listened to the political winds of many lands for years, knew the mayor would raise this demand with other regional leaders. Even if he did not endorse it himself, he would be obliged to bring it up. Public pressure meant the question would be asked. But despite the odds, the Free City-States had held firm and even gained the upper hand. Boromir felt the weight of that comparison. 50,000 orcs and Uruk, led by at least 3 ringwraiths, enough to march from Osgiliath to the White City and inflict terrible losses. Yet within days, a coalition army had formed and suppressed that force. Given more time, they might even push back. It was a humbling thought. And all this without leeway. If he had been present, how far might they already have advanced? "Come on, let's go in," Gandalf said, beckoning them toward the hidden gate into Moria. "I have passed through here before. If luck favors us, we might find Leeway's campfires and markings inside. They could guide us through." Then, Pippin started, but Merry clapped a hand over his mouth before he could say anything foolish. "Then what?" Gandalf demanded, turning back, displeasure in his voice. "Nothing, Gandalf. We'll be fine." Merry answered for Pippin, saving his friend from a scolding. Gimli patted both of them on the shoulders. "Come on, lads. Let's go see our lost homeland." Pippin watched Gandalf walk ahead and felt unease twist through him. When they reached a well-preserved campsite marked with Leeway's personal crest, Gandalf halted and spoke in a low, almost prophetic tone. "The lingering noises from ancient times always need someone to clear them. A wizard has that responsibility." "Aragorn," someone murmured, sensing the weight behind the words. Aragorn only shrugged. "I'll handle a small noise. Compared to the great hidden noises of the north, this is nothing. Take care of Frodo and the Hobbit behind him. We should be moving." They rested briefly at the marked camp, then rose and continued deeper. Far below the surface, a small flame kindled as if answering their progress. It crawled through shadowed halls and followed their steps. A coup! In a place so deep it seemed outside of Arda, within a prison wreathed in gray-black mist, Leeway felt an absurd itch in his nose. The air tasted foul. Breathing here scraped at the lungs. He had descended into ruins older than the First Age, into the scattered remains that had once formed Morgoth's fortress of Utumno. The foundations, sunk deeper than the central ocean's floor, lay in chilled silence. Left alone, these remnants might sleep for ages. Things rooted in such depths could not free themselves, unless Morgoth returned, and then the world might change in cataclysmic ways. Leeway drew his dragonflame steel greatsword from the carcass of a Balrog and rose from a mountain of shattered bodies. Around him, Utumno was empty of motion. He stood for a long moment, thinking, how to go back? Should he tunnel straight to the surface or search for some other way out? As if in answer, a pillar of white light blossomed before him, its radiance calling. Without hesitation, he stepped into it and let himself be swallowed. Light closed around him. Time lost meaning. An instant or an age slipped by. and then he arrived in a vast, immaculate hall. There an image unfurled before him like a memory made visible, a mountaintop, a tall tower, and the gray wizard fighting a creature awash in flame. The monster was a Balrog. Gandalf's battle filled the mountaintop with thunder. He had abandoned restraint and let loose all the power he had to confront the Balrog. Fire and shadow clashed in a storm that shook Durin's tower. Stones splintered, and the tower's structure groaned under the violence, great fragments tearing away and collapsing. The fight went on for 2 days and 2 nights. When Gandalf finally drove Glamdring through the Balrog's chest, the tower was already ruined, its peak broken and scattered by the fight's aftermath. The path from underground up to the ruined tower was choked with debris. The dwarves would no longer have to wonder at the tower's fate. Gandalf, after confirming the Balrog's death, let out a long, exhausted sigh. He had given everything. His strength ebbed away until he could scarcely breathe. From a mortal perspective, he seemed to die, his life spent utterly. Then the unseen presence that had summoned Leeway moved, and Gandalf's spirit was drawn back. As the only one among the 5 wizards who had steadfastly fulfilled his mission, Gandalf was granted a boon. The creator, Ilúvatar, reached down. In the Hall of White, Gandalf's consciousness rejoined him, and he felt himself drawn by a mighty hand. He received permission to return to the world, empowered anew as a Maiar, freed of the former limitations. It was a merciful, magnificent return. And yet, while he accepted this charge, Gandalf's face betrayed surprise. He sensed another presence in that vast place, one he knew intimately and had not expected to find there. "Leeway!" Gandalf cried, baffled and astonished. On his ruined mountaintop, Gandalf's eyes snapped open, and the name escaped him like a plea. How was he there? Chapter 370, Possible Ending. For the moment, Gandalf's astonishment had to be set aside. While he plunged into the depths and pursued the Balrog from the subterranean pool to the mountain summit, the rest of the ring-bearing company had been forced out of their grief by events and had turned eastward to seek aid from nearby Lothlorien. They had not gone far before border guards intercepted them. Haldir, a familiar face to Leeway, and the captain in charge of the border, escorted them to a lookout platform at the edge of the forest and set them to rest. They would need to talk through the particulars of their journey. Rivendell's messenger had reached Lothlorien before the company did, so word of their passage had already arrived. The Golden Wood's attitude toward them was friendly. They were willing to help. But as captain responsible for the wood's security, Haldir was not prepared to expose, especially not to dwarves, the route to the heart of Lothlorien. Not everyone could enter a place with the kind of unearned authority Leeway seemed to have that made people lower their guard willingly. Haldir proposed blindfolding Gimli individually. This differential treatment infuriated the dwarf and sparked several heated arguments with the elves. Finally, at Aragorn's suggestion, everyone put on blindfolds, and the dispute was settled. Lothlorien plainly attached great importance to the company. Both Lord and Lady came out to receive them. Seeing the ring-bearing party intact, Celeborn and Galadriel sighed with visible relief. Had Gandalf been there, he might have noticed that Galadriel herself looked drawn, as if she had been using her power beyond her strength. But Gandalf was not there. "The great enemy already knows you have come here," Celeborn said. "If you hope to move unseen, I fear it will be in vain. Dol Guldur, Mordor, and an army raised by Saruman besiege neighboring free cities. Were it not for the stubborn resistance of the men of the Nanhi River Bend, this place might not be safe either. The army hidden in Moria has joined with Dol Guldur to strike at Carltown, led by descendants of the skin-changer Bjorn. The road ahead is perilous, and you—" "As I am told, 9 set out, but only 8 return," Galadriel added. "Tell me, where is Gandalf? I would speak with him." For a long moment there was silence. Beside Celeborn, Galadriel answered, Gandalf had fallen into an abyss. The 8 who remained said nothing as Galadriel used her power to send visions and worded revelations each directly into their minds. Each saw some fragment of a future that mattered to them. The company needed rest. The Lord and Lady recognized this and did not press matters. They arranged quarters for the weary travelers. At last, the allies breathed out and tried to collect their thoughts about the last few days. "I still can't accept it," Sam said unexpectedly. He stroked the sword Liwei had given him. The blade was engraved with Liwei's name and a blessing, and fell into a quiet, trance-like sadness. Frodo traced the letters on the hilt and lost himself in thought. "The lady could not perceive Gandalf," he said at last. "He has fallen into a deep pit, or perhaps is dead." "So, Liwei too. Our journey has only just begun, and already this." "Cheer up, Sam," Frodo said softly, though he had no easy words. Inside, his sadness and confusion ran deeper than anyone's. He simply kept it bottled. Late that night, Frodo stared up at the sky, thinking. A persistent, stubborn thought took hold. The journey had only just begun, and Liwei and Gandalf had now gone from them. If this pattern continued, there would be more farewells and losses. How he wished none of this had happened, or that he alone could bear all of it so others would not have to. Frodo. Boromir approached quietly. Given Boromir's earlier behavior and his temptation toward the ring, Frodo bristled, but it passed. Boromir sat beside him and spoke in a low voice. "Whether it is Gandalf or Liwei, their efforts were not for nothing. You have carried enough, Frodo. Do not let the dead weigh your heart." He met Frodo's eyes for a moment, and in that look, Frodo read resolve. The exchange steadied him. His suspicion of Boromir eased a little. Late into the night, ethereal singing drifted through the trees. Legolas looked toward the sound. "They are singing laments for Gandalf, and also of Liwei's deeds," he said. The music was mournful and strange. Even the usually boisterous Pippin and Merry fell silent and listened, though they understood none of it. "Bet they didn't sing about Gandalf's fireworks or Liwei's cooking," Sam muttered, rising to fill in the omissions himself. He stepped into the clearing and recited a short, improvised poem. Aragorn paused in sharpening his sword to listen. There was, however, one unpleasant interruption. Gimli slept on, his deep snores threatening to drown out Sam's lines. Irritated, Aragorn turned and slapped the dwarf's rock-solid cheek with more force than he intended. Smack! Gimli sprang up indignant. "What's this? Elves may sing, but dwarves aren't allowed to snore. Outrageous! Favoritism!" He grumbled a bit and, sulking, rolled back over and turned his back to Aragorn, then quickly went back to sleep like a grumpy child. Sam finished his poem. Aragorn sharpened his sword again and rose to look around. He found Boromir sitting apart, eyes distant, and moved to speak with him. "In the lady's vision I saw destruction," Boromir said, "but there is still hope. Our people must have hope. Do you hear the clear horn that calls you home?" He spoke the hope of Gondor plainly. "I wish to hear the Tower Guard one day proclaim, 'The Lord of Gondor returns.'" The burden Boromir carried was heavy. When it became an expectation placed upon him, its weight only grew. Aragorn said nothing. While they talked, Galadriel sought out Frodo and led him to the mirror pool, wishing to show him more detailed revelations. Under her guidance, Frodo watched visions unspool. He saw disaster, war, flame, orcs swarming, the free cities riven and unable to protect their hinterlands, the Shire invaded, friends enslaved with shackles on their hands. Above all, an enormous flaming eye that covered everything. The mirror offered one possible future, and with it, it drew the attention of the thing that created fear, Sauron. The eye turned here. Frodo teetered on the edge of the pool, nearly overwhelmed. Then suddenly, a familiar dark blade, patterned with red, flashed over the vision and drove the eye away. Where the eye had been, another figure stood, reassuring, steady, and behind him marched an army ready to strike down darkness. The vision snapped closed. Frodo clutched at the ring as if it might slip from him and drew a harsh, shuddering breath, cold sweat on his face. Unintentionally, the mirror had tested his will. "I know what you saw," Galadriel said, a trace of surprise in her voice. "If your quest should fail, that is what will come, flame across all Middle-earth." "But it will not be that simple," Frodo answered. "Even great power may not fix everything." Galadriel stirred the pool with a gentle hand. Another scene rose. The shadow's power swelled with the return of the ring. The world plunged into darkness, and only a single place in the north held a light. Yet the lord of that shining hold sat motionless atop a high pile of enemy corpses, silent and unyielding, an image of triumph that was also its own loneliness, an era closed by a single absolute victory. As that possibility evaluated itself, the visions shifted once more to something farther east. At Roadside Fort, Little Pink, who had been uneasy for days, lifted his head. He had felt the residents around him acting oddly, withholding something from him. The town's bustle could not long stay secretive. Commanders met, representatives and administrators gathered, a public vote was held, and the fort moved into a wartime stance. Soldiers were mustered, civilians boarded the Sky Road and fled east. The town grew suddenly quiet, and Little Pink could not sleep. A growing emptiness pressed at him. He had watched over that land for years, an unseen guardian. That day he spread his massive wings above a golden malorn and revealed a ferocity none had seen before. He called himself Behurden, the Guardian, and the name fit the role he chose to take up. He was unlike the dragons of legend, steady, mature, loyal, more like an old, reliable steward than a rampaging terror. For years he had curled quietly in that region, a presence people had come to forget, because one person had always stood at the front, bearing everything. Now that one person had gone, vanished, and the land needed him. Behurden opened his eyes and reared his head. He let out a roar that rolled through the clouds. Orange-red fire lashed into the sky, burning through the dark overhead and lighting the heavens. His colossal form crossed the mountains as he turned eastward toward the war. Before the mirror of Galadriel, Lady Galadriel revealed much and endured the temptation of the One Ring, passing her test. Soon she would follow her destiny, return to the west, to Valinor, the Blessed Land, and no longer dwell in Arda. From that moment on, the fate of the One Ring no longer rested with Galadriel. "This task is meant for you, Frodo," she told him. "If you cannot do it, then no one can." "I know what I must do, but I'm afraid," Frodo admitted, looking away, feeling the burden on him grow. Galadriel looked at him and spoke slowly. "Even the least of us can change the course of the future." It was not the first time Frodo had heard those words, but they gave him enormous strength. He gripped the ring and steadied his heart. After resting, the company gathered themselves and prepared to move on. Celeborn warned them, "Your route will not be safe. The two human cities at Nanhi River Bend are at war, and the fighting in the north has reached a deadlock. Wingless remnants of dragons have fled from the north wastes into the fortresses of the Free City States. They cannot break through, but they have caused great trouble. That may also be an opportunity," he continued. "A great war can cover your tracks. You should approach from another side, avoid the main lines. Take the waterway to the wilderness near the Lohan Northern Plateau, then abandon the boats and go south through Rohan. It is a relatively safe path. The journey is long. May it go smoothly." Celeborn offered his blessing, and they bowed. Before they left, Galadriel hurried over and gave the ring-bearers the gifts she had prepared to help them on their way, many of them deeply meaningful, each leaving a lasting impression. They set off again, rowing swiftly downriver. As they neared the boundary of Nanhi River Bend and the war zone, the company hauled their boats ashore. That night they rested and debated their next move. Without a wizard, their choices felt limited. Wizards had a way of suggesting options the rest of them would not have seen. "I can already hear the horns and clamor from the river bend," Boromir said. "Taking the waterway further would be unwise." "As the Elf Lord said, we can go the Rohan Road south to Gondor," he added. "I know that route. My father told me of it long ago." Mention of Boromir's father drew the group's attention, and he continued, "When my father was young, he traveled here with my grandfather, Li Wei, and the old king of Rohan. It was said that then the two fortified cities at Nanhi River Bend had not yet been built. During that trip, Li Wei made an original bonfire there that would never go out. Later, that bonfire became the emblem and banner of those two cities." "The journey must have been wonderful," Aragorn said, smiling as he pictured it. "Aye," Boromir sighed. "Even my father grows nostalgic for that rare voyage." Nostalgia for the past, for old friends, Aragorn trailed off. Of those who had made that journey, only a frail old prime minister remained, one who had stood against Sauron for decades and had grown set in his ways. The others were gone. Their reverie was cut short by a piercing shriek overhead. The company snapped to arms. "Ringwraith!" someone whispered. Aragorn stared up at the dark patrol sweeping back and forth in the sky. Wasn't he leading the battle against Carl Town in the north? "Why is he here?" he muttered. "Something may have driven him," Legolas said. He tipped his head, sensing the air. "Do you see that faint, hazy orange glow in the sky?" "I see it," What is it? I do not know, but it is something even the ringwraith fears. The fell beast flapped hard and bore the ringwraith over the company. Its aura chilled them all. The four hobbits trembled most of all. They could not close their eyes for fear the Nazgul would appear next to them. Frodo suffered the worst. As the ringwraith drew near the One Ring, reacted, tormenting him such that his soul and body felt like prey. The pain no longer pretended, it was plain and brutal. Even Legolas and Gimli felt that raw fear, but two in the company met the ringwraith without flinching. Aragorn watched with calm eyes. Boromir's gaze burned with anger. Years of war had burned away his fear. Now he wanted nothing more than to unleash Gondor's fury on that flying armored terror. "He's heading for Nanhi Riverbend," Aragorn said after studying the sky. "We can't let him pass." "Legolas," Aragorn called softly, and when the elf turned, Aragorn pointed out the fell beast beneath the Nazgul. Legolas understood at once. The Nazgul flew low above the forest, scarcely 200 meters away, close enough to be dangerous for him. Legolas drew his bow, stilling the fear that surged in him, and let one moonlit arrow fly. The arrow struck the fell beast in a soft spot. Without hesitation, Legolas loosed another, piercing the membrane of the creature's wing. It screamed and plunged into the trees. "Now!" Aragorn roared and sprinted forward. Boromir followed hard on his heels. Gimli raised his axe and charged. From the woods, three figures, two tall and one short, burst out with knife and axe, falling upon the fallen beast. They hacked at the mount in a flurry of blows until it was destroyed. When the ringwraith hit the ground, the three sprang upon him. In moments, the battle was over. Aragorn twirled his sword and sheathed Andúril. Boromir put away his iron blade, the one marked with the rune Undead Slayer V. Gimli kicked the empty shell of the ringwraith's armor and grinned. "The workmanship on your sword is marvelous, Aragorn," Gimli said with approval. "You actually split that helmet clean open. And Boromir, your sword did great service. The cry he gave just now nearly deafened me," Aragorn replied. "Not bad yourself, Gimli," Boromir laughed. "Your axe did its part." They laughed together, relief and a strange merriment at a world in which, for the moment, only the ringwraiths had been harmed. At the same time, far away on a snowbound peak, the Eagle King, having received a revelation, had flown from his nest toward the summit of Moria to greet the returning Gandalf. Li Wei felt a premonition as well. The one god, the omniscient, omnipotent creator, seemed to nudge him. The world stirred the will and soul within him. It was time. He, too, should return. Chapter 372. Human Courage. Legolas, Gimli, come help. We need to hide the boats quickly and move out at once. After felling the passing ringwraith, Aragorn and Boromir understood at once how dangerous the situation was. Until the One Ring and Sauron were destroyed, a Nazgul could not truly die. It could only be defeated and would return once it could seize another host. Even though they had brought this ringwraith down, it would remember where it had fallen, and lingering would only invite enemies to discover them. They hid the boats in haste and set out immediately, not stopping until dawn. Only when the hobbits, the weakest, could no longer go on did they take a short rest at Boromir's suggestion. They had crossed into the border of the northern plateau of Lohan, relatively safe for the moment since the war had not yet spread that far. But safe did not mean comfortable. Threats still shadowed the area. Uruk armies moving along the edge of Fangorn, the fighting around the Behi River bend, and more. Near a stand of trees, Aragorn suggested, "Let's make a fire. We need warmth and a short rest to gather strength for what's ahead." With Gandalf gone, Aragorn had taken up the leader's mantle. "Walking, do you know what's ahead of us?" Gimli grumbled, remembering the terrain to the south. "Rugged, a maze of hills, rotten muddy swamps that smell awful. People say ghosts roam there. Do we really have to go that way?" "Yes, it's the path we must take," Aragorn replied calmly. "Complain less, old dwarf. Save your strength for the road." Gimli scowled. All right, no more complaining." Pippin returned then, dropping a bundle of firewood. "Where's Frodo?" Legolas, sitting nearby, rose suddenly. "There is something wrong, Aragorn. I sense an evil coming." Aragorn's face grew hard. Elves are born with a keener sense of evil. Such a word must not be ignored. "Go find Frodo." Come. Deep in the woods, Frodo wandered through a ruined building, lonely and frightened. The ring at his breast was active, thrumming with malignant will, trying to reach out and corrupt those around him. It did not tempt at random. It had its own calculations. First, it dismissed the other hobbits. They were unsuitable. Then the dwarf, too stubborn and hard to bend. The elf, resistant beyond most. Aragorn, a descendant of Isildur, might have been a target, but Aragorn had already been tested once. He had refused when Frodo had offered the ring. One person remained, Boromir. Unlike the hobbits, Boromir was a man with worry, duty, and ambition. Unlike Aragorn, he was an ordinary human commander, susceptible to the promise of power in desperate times. The ring set its sights on him. "We shouldn't be alone, Frodo," Boromir said as he gathered wood, his voice changing from gentle to pleading. "I know what you're thinking and why you've kept away, but is this necessary?" Under Frodo's fearful stare, Boromir's pleading hardened into obsession. He reached for the ring and demanded, "Lend it to me, just for a little while. I'll bring it back when I'm done." It failed. Frodo fled, putting on the ring and vanishing. Boromir fell to his knees, staring at the spot where Frodo had been, filled with remorse. "What have I done?" he murmured, covering his face, tears of regret falling. He realized he had been the one to push Frodo to that desperate act. "Frodo, I'm sorry." On the west bank of the North Bridge, by the Behi River bend, a small Uruk squad that had been moving around the ruined hills near the waterfall halted. Their captain sniffed the air, eyes widening. "I feel it," he said, then barked an order. "Turn around. Quick! Follow me, full speed." Back in the forest, Aragorn found Frodo and called, "Frodo!" Frodo did not answer, only looked at him in terror. Aragorn understood what had happened. "Frodo, I swore to protect you." Frodo took the ring off again and placed it in his open palm, showing it to Aragorn. A chorus of dark whispers clawed at Aragorn's mind. His eyes flickered with a strange light as he stared. He stepped forward, hand outstretched. For a moment it seemed the ring might slip into Aragorn's grasp. Then, instead of taking it, he seized Frodo's hand and urged him to put it away safely. Aragorn had refused the ring a second time. A moment later, Aragorn drew his sword. "Run, Frodo!" Frodo startled and drew Sting, which glimmered faintly. From the riverbank came a shouted alarm. "A halfling! Seize him!" The Uruk had been drawn by the ring's call. The captain ordered, "Kill everyone, except the halfling." A dozen elite Uruk detached to tie Aragorn down, while nearly 100 charged toward Frodo. Aragorn cut down several heavily armed Uruk and fell back to cover Frodo's retreat. Facing hundreds of furious Uruk, he hardened his heart. He raised his longsword, gave a fierce cry that chilled the attackers, and leapt from a high spot, sweeping through the ranks with his blade. "A bunch of scum! It was just a name. He's not even here!" cursed the Uruk captain as he recovered and rallied his troops. At that moment, Legolas and Gimli arrived, following Aragorn and cutting a bloody path. "Where did the little hobbit run off to?" Gimli asked, swinging his axe. Another band of elite Uruk ran in pursuit of the 4 fleeing hobbits. Not far away, Boromir heard the clash of steel. He could not afford to grieve further. He sprang up, smashing into an Uruk that had grabbed Pippin and Merry, drew his sword, and cut the creature down. More Uruk swarmed behind him. "Run!" Boromir pushed them, covering their escape. A ring of Uruk closed around him, cleavers raised, snarling. He fought them off with single-minded ferocity, his plain iron sword flashing as he parried and drove them back. His clothes were stained with his own blood. His blade was slick with the dark blood of his foes. Despite his strength, he was only a man. When an elite Uruk captain, huge, stronger than the others, and deadly with both sword and bow, joined the fray with over 100 Uruk at his back, Boromir began to suffer grievous wounds. Still, he stood between the attackers and the 2 hobbits. Fear is human instinct. Courage is a choice. Boromir chose courage. Arrows found him, poisoned, searing, and another struck through his waist. He staggered, slaying what he could with his single working arm until his strength failed. He knelt, consciousness blurring, unable to move. "Pippin, Merry," he whispered, watching them carried away, helpless. As the executioner raised his blade, an arrow flew for the Uruk captain. The captain spun like a madman and sliced the shaft from the air, an act that made Legolas's face harden. Legolas drew his twin blades and leapt into the fight. He and Gimli bought a sliver of time. Aragorn rushed to Boromir and hauled him up. "Aragorn," Boromir gasped. "I have an apple, a golden apple. It will help." Boromir coughed. "Take it, please. Use it. I don't deserve to." He faltered, despairing that he had disgraced himself and Gondor. "Get up, Boromir!" Aragorn snapped, half angry at the man's self-reproach. He stopped looking for whatever golden apple Boromir meant and instead forced his own into Boromir's mouth. While holding him up, he pulled the 2 arrows free from Boromir's body. Then he poured out the healing potion he had carried since Roadside Fort and forced it down Boromir's throat. The sudden assault of taste and medicine nearly choked him. "Stop, stop! I'm fine! I'm fine!" Boromir croaked. The potion took hold, his color came back, and he rose. "Then, fight!" Aragorn handed him the iron sword that had dropped. Boromir took a breath, seized it, and with a shout, rejoined the struggle. Human beings are flawed, but they keep fighting. Boromir refused to lie down and die without using what strength he had left to atone. Behind him, the sound of another horn answered his own. Hooves pounded the ground. The reinforcements from the Behe River bend were arriving. Far to the south, the blast of Boromir's horn had reached into Gondor. Denethor, in Minas Tirith, jerked to his feet, eyes wide. "The horn! The north! Boromir!" Word reached those who could hear it. Men of Gondor, far-off rangers, Faramir with his small band in Ithilien. Yet the power of Mordor was immense, and reinforcements were thin. Denethor's heart trembled. In the fort at the Behe River bend, the garrison commander heard a horn he did not recognize at first. An old ranger from the crossroads named it at once. "The Horn of Gondor. The White City sounds it when its commander rides to battle." The sound came from the river near the northern plateau, another observer said, and it's linked to that Uruk squad that just changed course. Word spread quickly along the Great Road and through the city-states of the region. Forces mobilized, riders from Rovanion, contingents from the neighboring towns and river settlements. The gates opened, cavalry and footmen surged forth. The attack on the orcs turned into a rout. In the open brown lands, tens of thousands of armored riders smashed into the enemy array like a wall of steel. Spiders and most of the lighter monsters were cut down. Ogres and ologs were few and isolated. They could not blunt the charge. The siege of the Behe River bend, it seemed, would end that day. The city's garrison poured out through the gates and linked up with the reinforcements. 5 companies, 1,000 men, crossed the North Bridge and thundered toward the horn's call. In the leaf-strewn wood where Boromir stood, the tide was turning as the vanguard neared. Despite the arrows, the wounds, the poison, Boromir pressed forward, killing what he could. When the enemy captain closed in for the killing blow, Legolas and Gimli flew in with Aragorn and the rest, and together they pushed the Uruk back. Aragorn drove the arrows from Boromir's flesh, forced a healing draught and whatever comfort he could into him, and gave him his sword. Recovered enough to stand, Boromir met the next wave with a roar. Humans may falter, but they rise for the fight, to redeem themselves and protect those they love. The thunder of horses grew louder. Reinforcements had arrived. Roar! A tremendous cry split the sky, tearing through the dark clouds over the Anduin Valley. Sunlight followed, glinting off scales the color of living flame and lending the dragon an almost holy presence. "What is that?" Those who had never been to Roadside Fort panicked at the sight. The ringwraiths inspired terror, and that terror was their greatest weapon. Remove fear, and armies could stand up to them. A dragon needed no subtlety. Its very existence could topple kingdoms. News of Leeway's departure had already put many of the territory's soldiers in a furious mood. That anger had begun to blunt the ringwraith's power. Just as the defenders were preparing a full counterattack, a dragon appeared, and a fire drake at that, the deadliest of its kind. Everything changed at once. The orcs, too, stared dumbfounded, unsure whose side the beast favored. Only the 3 ringwraiths leading the assault broke out in real panic. Some of the dwarves trained their dragon-hunting crossbows and tried to fire, but a seasoned defender stopped them. "That's Bahurdin," he said. "He's the guardian of Roadside Fort." "It's on our side," another confirmed. As if to prove it, Bahurdin unleashed a gout of flame at the 3 ringwraiths circling above. 2 were incinerated to ash in an instant. The third flung itself low and fled, but it was too late. The dragon's fire swept from the sky to the ground, scorching orcs and the huge beasts massing outside the walls. It was devastation. Further north, several wingless drakes, driven out of the north waste by unknown hands, had joined the orcs. They were vicious and troublesome, their numbers and maneuverability pushing the defenders to the brink. The city hurled heavy, armor-piercing bolts at them, but the drakes were cunning and protected their vital points. The defenders had readied 3 Legion champions to leap down and engage them at the worst moments. Now they found they needn't. Little Pink, the nickname some of the garrison had given the dragon in fond disbelief, no Battles, stooped low and exhaled a long, white-hot stream of flame. Several drakes howled and scattered. Scales were tough on all sides and size was similar, but Battles had wings and breath that could melt metal. That was a qualitative advantage. With him on the field, the outcome was no longer in doubt. The drakes could not escape. Emboldened, the defenders launched their counterattack in force, driving into the disordered orc host. The front stabilized, the attackers faltered. The 4th Ringwraith, arriving from Dol Guldur, looked at the ruined line and made a decision. He would withdraw and rush word to his comrades attacking the Nanhe River bend. As he passed over a grove of yellow-leaved trees, something inside the place tugged at him. Before he could descend to investigate, arrows felled him. An ambush followed. 3 attackers sprang out and pounded him, his mount and his armor. Thugs, plain and simple, the Ringwraith thought as he felt himself losing form and melting back into shadow. Among the 3, the dwarf's weapon looked the heaviest but did the least harm. The others, 2 humans, struck the deepest. One carried a king's sword, a blade known for its power to bind and wound things of evil. The other used a strange iron sword that bit to the bone with an unfamiliar, terrible pain. It was terrible luck to meet such people unprepared. The Ringwraith made no sound and, stripped of his shape, slipped back toward Mordor to wait for his master to forge new armor to house him anew. A magnificent horn blast rose from the forest, and the defenders at the Nanhe River bend answered. Meanwhile, Gandalf, guided by the Eagle King, had been brought to the Golden Wood, where Lady Galadriel awaited. She presented him with a new, immaculate white staff. He waved it twice. He could not help feeling the staff lacked a certain edge, but as an instrument for spell work, it was markedly more potent than his old one. If need be, he thought wryly, he could have leeway later adapt it. Gandalf's mood was only half serene. Saruman lay unconscious in the wood. "He has been out for many days," Galadriel said. "We found him like this. At first the Ringwraith so weakened him he could barely stand," she went on. "Then the great enemy took advantage and dragged him into the shadow. His condition is grave. He has broken taboos," she said, eyes hard, "and has forfeited the right to lead in the white robe." With that, she handed Gandalf a white robe. He accepted it solemnly. "I accept the charge," he said. He draped the robe over himself, approached Saruman, raised the staff, and let light rain down from the high dome of the wood. Saruman writhed, his face the picture of torment. The fierce radiance cut through the shadow clinging to him. With its help, he opened his eyes. "Gandalf," he gasped, drenched in sweat. Saruman saw defeat, felt anger and humiliation, but in the end, the will of the One was clear, and he could only yield. "One has not yet returned," Galadriel said, looking to Gandalf. Gandalf frowned. "It's complicated. There are things I can't yet understand, things I cannot guess for certain." His words were hedged and shadowy. Even the elf found them puzzling. Then he turned his head toward the northwest, past the misty mountains. A quiet smile crossed his face. "Ah, he's back." At Roadside Fort, people tilted their heads up, watching the sky. A soft shaft of light descended over the fort, spreading outward until it wrapped around the beacon's pillar and touched the bed in a private chamber within the castle. Achievement unlocked. Return from Nether. Leeway opened his eyes. Chapter 374, Quiet Street. "The streets feel too quiet," Leeway muttered as he stepped out of the castle, an odd uneasiness settling over him. "No one chatting by the roadside, and Little Pink isn't even around." "They've probably all been sent to the Eastern War Zone," came a reply from an old man bent over in his garden, raking at a row of potatoes without looking up. His voice was steady and unhurried. "Eastern War Zone? Yes, it's been pretty chaotic in the east lately. From the South River set to Carl Town, it's crawling with orcs, almost up to the Sky Road. Something like that happened? You must have been away. You haven't heard the news." The old man worked at his patch of potatoes, 9 by 9, a neat small field, still leisurely as he spoke. "Except for the garrisons we had to keep, Almost every young man fit to bear arms has gone east. By now, I figure the worst of the orcs have been cleared. If you'd left earlier, you might have caught the tail end of it. Is that so? Tell me more. I want to know the current situation and what we're planning next. Now, what situation could there be? Little Pink's already flown off to join the battle. They're probably gathered and heading for the Black Gate. Heading to the Black Gate for what? To find our Lord, of course. Didn't we have that meeting a while back? The old man paused and glanced at Li Wei. You weren't there, were you? The short of it, everyone agreed that the Lord's disappearance is tied to the Dark Lord of Mordor. If we break into Mordor and take that Dark Lord, we'll learn the truth. That makes sense. It's most likely Sauron, Li Wei nodded. To push through Mordor's Black Gate, made of steel, we sent more than 20 full legions, 40,000 men assembled in Rovanian. All the rangers and legion champions who could still lift a sword were sent. I wonder where they are now. The old man finished the last row in his patch, stood and stretched. Some say our Lord has left this world and will never return. I don't believe it. I won't believe such nonsense, even if it's said by elves. It's a pity I'm getting old. I can't go out searching for clues anymore. If you think old men of Roadside Fort are easy to bully, you're wrong. If I can lift a hoe, I can lift a sword. He was a solid, weathered man, someone who had clearly seen battle in his youth. Li Wei nodded. Lots happened while I was gone. It doesn't feel like I was gone that long. It's about time I went to see for myself. The old man turned as if to leave, then halted. He stared at Li Wei, then took a step closer. His face went slack with disbelief, then softened as tears welled and tracked down his wrinkled cheeks. Am I dreaming? Is it really you? You've returned. A small crowd gathered slowly behind him, voices rising into cheers. A soft, almost sacred light seemed to return with the legend, and the dullness that had settled over Roadside Fort melted into excitement. News spread outward from the fort like ripples. Li Wei sent a messenger along the Sky Road to the east to reach the armies assembled there. Word of his return would be a much-needed anchor. The army did not disband. They stayed where they were by Li Wei's orders, waiting for him to finish his business elsewhere. That cautious stillness put pressure on Mordor, and they reacted. Mordor threw their weight into strengthening the Black Gate and summoned more troops from the far east and from Harad. The offense and defense had reversed. After announcing his return and handling a string of recent disturbances, Li Wei went to Water City to confirm what the ranger outpost at Eregion had reported about the Ringbearer team. The Grey Wizard and the other 8 went toward Moria's west gate and have not returned, the outpost ranger told him. Li Wei thought for a moment. Based on what he knew, the Ringbearer team had probably passed through Moria by now, but their destination after leaving Moria was unknown. As for Gandalf, his situation was uncertain. In that indescribable hall, seemingly outside the world's bounds, Gandalf's soul had been summoned. He had appeared to return to Arda, but his whereabouts now could be anywhere, Lothlorien, Fangorn, or some other place entirely. He would have to see for himself. Anything else? Li Wei asked casually. The ranger hesitated, then spoke. We picked up reports from the Enedwaith region. Something unusual is happening at the Eason River crossing on the Rowan border. Forces from the Black Land and orcs are gathering with clear intent to attack. Li Wei's interest sharpened. Go on. A reconnaissance team saw a dark, winged figure patrol the sky one night. We suspect a ringwraith. He's been moving between the Black Land and Isengard. If our assessment is right, a major battle is likely at the Eisen River crossing soon. The ranger laid out everything his scouts had observed, and then fell silent, waiting for Li Wei's decision. If the Eisen crossing fell, the defenders would be forced back to the Hornburg at Helm's Deep, and then the Battle of the Hornburg would almost certainly follow. The time between those events in Li Wei's memory had been only days. Helm's Deep was critical. If it fell, Rohan's interior would be exposed. He could not allow that. Coincidentally, the Water City garrison had not been swept into the Eastern Campaign. Because of orders Li Wei had given before his disappearance, they had stayed to defend the western lands and the southwestern coast. With his decision made, Li Wei returned to Water City and set its machinery in motion. Troops formed up in the open square, ranks filling fast as commanders readied contingents. Assemble the legions. Go support the Ison River crossing. The city answered his command with swift efficiency. Soldiers tightened armor, standards were raised, and banners snapped in the wind. Men who had been waiting since his return now focused on the task ahead as Li Wei surveyed the mobilization. He had confirmed Gandalf's warning about Isengard and even picked up a mysterious ring along the way, but other urgent matters in the North Wasteland demanded attention first. For now, the immediate need was clear. Depart. Chapter 375, Things Change. War always came too quickly. On the east bank of the Ison River crossing, two forces had already collided. One was a vanguard of black men and Uruks, about 2,000 strong. Opposing them were 10 companies of cavalry under Theodred, only son of Theoden and Prince of Rohan, supported by more than 100 archers and 4 additional companies of infantry, roughly 500 men, rushed up from western Rohan. Numerically, the armies were roughly equal. In quality, Rohan clearly held the advantage. Theodred had inherited his father's courage, and under his command the riders fought fiercely, driving the invaders back. They won the field, but he felt no joy. The situation is not good, he told himself. Reports from the rear had troubled him. Rohan could hardly be called secure. To the west, a vast host of black men, orcs, and Uruks gathered. Only a vanguard had been enough to put immense pressure on the frontier. Theodred still did not know the true strength of the enemy main force. To the east, the threat was no less grave. Mordor's armies moved across the Emyn Muil and prowled the wide plains of Eastmark. They did not seem intent solely on attacking Rohan. They were searching for something there. But should that search fail, or the opportunity present itself, they would turn their malice toward Rohan in an instant. Rohan faced blows from both front and rear. Only the remote northern plateau seemed relatively safe, lying close to the cities of the Free City states. Not long before, while contending with a massive Mordor army, those states had sent forces to clear Uruks from the plateau. That spared Rohan much trouble and let them concentrate on the pressing attacks from east and west. Sometimes Theodred found himself wishing his father would move the capital to the northern plateau. Though distant and sparsely populated, it was safer. Who would have thought that the most barren, dangerous Northwaste would become the safest place simply because the Free City states had erected 2 fortified towns at the bend of the Nanhay River? There was no time for such speculation. The immediate defense mattered most. Though the vanguard from Isengard and the Black Lands had been driven off, the crossing's position remained precarious. The hastily thrown-up defenses on the west bank were weak and unlikely to hold against a major attack. As the day waned and the sun dropped toward the horizon, Theodred made a decision. He would take a small detachment of infantry and cross to the west bank to strengthen the line. Before he could move, unexpected visitors arrived. A squad of 5 rangers from the Free City states. Leading them was a captain who wore a plain shoulder badge of solid gold. Unremarkable at first glance, but respected. Theodred had heard of such honors from his father, a mark established long ago by the Lord of the Northern Territory for exceptional soldiers. If this captain carried such a badge, his word was worth listening to. Theodred halted his preparations and spoke with the ranger. "I know who you are. I've heard rangers from the Free City states patrol Enedwaith, keeping the roads and passing information to allies. That is welcome." "And what news do you bring us this time?" he asked, anxious. If he delayed, the west bank might fall. The ranger captain's answer made him frown. "We advise withdrawal. Recall your men from the west bank and fall back." "Why should we retreat?" Theodred demanded. He would not abandon ground on a single sentence. The ranger explained plainly there were too many of them. Tens of thousands of Uruk forces had gathered within Isengard and were preparing a full assault. From the east, an elite force of fierce black men and half-breed orcs was already on the move and would likely be upon them by nightfall. If they did not withdraw now, not many would survive on either bank. Enemy strength far exceeded what they had expected, well over 10,000, while Rohan had only about 2,000 here. Theodred's scouts had only seen the vanguard at Isengard's gates. They dared not probe inside where it was too dangerous. The rangers, however, seemed to have slipped past Isengard's guards and gathered intelligence from within. Such initiative and reach were terrifyingly effective. I understand. Thank you for the warning, Theodred said. He looked toward the sinking sun and felt cold sweat on his brow. If the ranger spoke true, the enemy would be upon them very soon. Then what will you do? The captain asked. Without Isengard neutralized, this crossing cannot play a meaningful defensive role, Theodred answered. The makeshift defenses on the west bank cannot stop the enemy, and our hold on the east bank is no firmer. We must withdraw to Helm's Deep. The high walls of Hornburg alone can give us a chance against such numbers. Tell your people Rohan will remember this. Far from the river in the Golden Wood, Gandalf took stock of the wider situation. The Fellowship has been scattered, he said. It may be pointless to pursue their trail now. Saruman replied, The hobbits will have aid from the Free City-States. Do not worry about them. Our greater concern is Isengard. The great enemy has taken control of that force. He will certainly strike at Rohan. Isengard? Gandalf repeated. Yes, hear me, Gandalf. I know the place better than most. The western defenders of Rohan alone cannot stand against Isengard's Uruk hordes. And the disloyal men from the Black Lands. Oh, disloyal men. You see, I warned you. Gandalf's words carried a trace of reproach, but Saruman's face flushed and he fell silent, trying to steer the talk back to sober matters. He could not deny that Gandalf was no longer the same wandering gray. Whether or not Gandalf bore his little ring of starlight, his power was not less than Saruman's. The white robe Gandalf now wore, one he had once refused to accept, sat on him with a brightness that could not be denied. Saruman's own robes, once a riot of colors, now looked muddied and impure, neither bright nor whole, caught between white and faded. Saruman felt his identity as one of the Astari slipping. Even should he return to the Blessed Realm and regain whatever power Amaya might recover, he suspected judgment would follow for his deeds. Still, he clung to the belief that he was at least equal to Gandalf. As for Gandalf's view of him, well, Gandalf had no time for Saruman's private grievances. That gray, no, white, wizard had always treated friend and king alike with the same gentle authority, and though Saruman had fallen, Gandalf still regarded him as a friend. An old friend who had gone astray. Chapter 376, New Mission for 4 People. The blast of horns announced reinforcements from the Free City-States. With over 1,000 elite soldiers, 5 full-strength companies, the Uruk force was swiftly wiped out. Their numbers had been no match. Even if they had equaled or outnumbered the Behi Riverbend reinforcements, they would still have been crushed. The equipment here was superior, and the troops highly skilled. Add to that the anger and vindictiveness stemming from Li Wei's mysterious disappearance, and the Uruks were doomed. Realizing they could not win, they fought their way out of the clearing and fled into the forest. But there was nowhere safe to hide. They tried to escape into the great ancient wood on the western side of the northern plateau. The yellow-leafed clearing where the ring-bearer party had been attacked had many open spaces, allowing both sides to maneuver. The western old-growth, however, was different. Rugged terrain, tall trees growing dense and wild, a continuous sea of foliage. Any army entering it would be scattered and isolated. This forest was Fangorn. The Uruks' plan had been clever, but they had badly underestimated the mobility and efficiency of the Behi Riverbend reinforcements. During the retreat or flight, their casualties mounted rapidly. By the time they reached Fangorn's edge, they had been nearly annihilated. The hope of shelter evaporated. Fall in. Prepare to return to the city, ordered the Legion commander, having confirmed that the Uruks had been largely cleared away. At that moment, 4 figures arrived, 2 men, an elf, and a panting dwarf, the remaining members of the ring-bearer team. Where are the hobbits? Aragorn hurried up to the Legion commander. Were they taken with the Uruks? Hobbits? The commander frowned for a moment, then shook his head. Haven't seen any. You didn't accidentally clear them out with the orcs, did you? Gimli muttered from the side, still catching his breath. Couldn't you say something reassuring for once? Before Aragorn could reply, Boromir snapped at him, and Gimli fell silent. Rest assured on that point, the Legion commander said. We can tell a hobbit from an orc and a dwarf. Besides, these were Uruks, quite tall. We wouldn't mistake them. Gimli's brow knit. He felt there was more behind the man's words. What do you mean? Nothing more than that. We won't be harming friendly forces by mistake, the commander answered. It had better be, Gimli murmured. When Leeway returns, I'll have something to say if it isn't. At the name, the mood shifted. Both sides fell quiet. The Legion commander closed his eyes for a moment, head bowed. I believe he will return, Gimli said, sensing the tension. Yes, the commander replied slowly, we all do. While Boromir, Gimli, and the Legion commander exchanged a few more words, Aragorn moved away from the group and paced the border of the forest, eyes fixed on the ground. Legolas followed. At the very edge, Aragorn paused and looked up. What is it? Legolas asked. Unusual tracks, Aragorn answered. They're fresh. The hobbits are alive inside the forest. The two exchanged a brief look. They had a lead. After a quick discussion, it was decided there were no other pressing matters. Before the reinforcements left, Boromir thanked the Legion commander. The commander only said that it had been an order left by Li Wei, duty to be done, and then dismissed his men. Judging from Boromir's expression, he would not forget the aid. Remembering Li Wei's instructions, the commander also ordered some supplies left behind, healing potions and food. Food, however, was of little concern. Before leaving the Golden Wood, Lady Galadriel had given the ring-bearer team a generous supply of lembas. A small piece restored stamina enough to run all day without hunger. With those and the potions, the four set off at once, choosing a direction and running without pause. One day later, deep in southern Fangorn, they met someone who had been waiting for them. A figure walked toward them, bathed in a pale, holy light. Robes hid the face. Aragorn, stepping forward, called out, White Wizard, are you Saruman? The figure smiled faintly. In one sense I was, he answered, but I am not him now. I have taken the role he should have played. Gandalf? Aragorn breathed, recognition and relief in his voice. Moments later, the company emerged from the trees, now led by Gandalf the White. Do not worry about Pippin and Merry, Gandalf said, putting everyone at ease. They are safe, safer than you think. I put them in Treebeard's care. Treebeard? Boromir's brow rose. The name sounded strange and ancient. Is that reliable? An Ent, Gandalf explained. A shepherd of the trees. Few know of them now, and fewer understand them, but they have stood since the shaping of the world. Boromir nodded, even if he did not fully comprehend. Gandalf looked the company over, and then counted aloud. 4 of you here, plus Merry and Pippin, and Frodo and Sam gone on their way. The fellowship may be divided, but its members remain whole. That is heartening. We're whole except for one, Aragorn said. Gandalf, what of Liwai? Has he truly gone? Gandalf raised an eyebrow. He needs no pity from you. He is well, indeed better off than I am. He's all right then, Gimli whooped, laughing with relief. I knew it, he's fine. But Sir Dwarf, we'll have work soon. Gandalf's face sobered. A great evil rises in Isengard because of someone's mistake. Dark clouds gather and drift this way. The king of Rohan has been stricken and all lines of communication cut. He knows nothing of this. I still lack full news of the Isen River crossing and Helm's Deep, but it is unlikely to be good. If those defenses fall, Rohan will be left exposed. He turned toward the looming hills and the distant capital. Time is short. We must leave at once. My home is deep in the forest, at the foot of the mountains. While Gandalf and his companions hurried toward the capital of Rohan, Fangorn was calm and green. Pippin and Merry sat on Treebeard's broad shoulders, chattering away. I promised Gandalf I would keep you safe, so I must see you to a safe place, Treebeard rumbled. You little hobbits may stay at my home without worry. The road is long. Perhaps you would like to hear one of my songs. His voice was deep and slightly hoarse as he began to sing. Before long, the 2 hobbits had dozed off. All right then, sleep, little ones. Sleep soundly. Sleep as long as you will. I have other matters to mind, Treebeard added after a while. I have a feeling a great shadow is growing near Fangorn, and on the other side of the river, in the Brown Lands, there are stubborn new things, blocky and hard to speak with. We must have a meeting about this. That all-seeing eye sits in Barad-dûr, vigilant day and night, never at rest, Gandalf said as they rode through western Rohan. Sauron is anxious. He fears the rise of the human city-states, their leaders, and what you might yet accomplish. The moment he learned Li Wei had gone out of contact, he launched a full-scale assault on the human world, hoping for a quick victory. Faced with Sauron's armies, the free city-states have been hard-pressed. Gondor and Rohan are in even graver peril. Lady Galadriel has told me of Gondor's plight. Several great armies are pressing it from different directions, their numbers far exceeding Gondor's defenders. The northern breakthrough was costly, but held. The noose in the south tightens. We must move faster. At Gandalf's urging, the five sped day and night and reached Edoras in 4 days, arriving at the gates of the Golden Hall. A sneering figure blocked them as they dismounted. "Where did this ragged vagrant come from? Your robes are hardly fit for my king's sight," the man jeered. He wanted to humiliate Gandalf by insults. "Who are you?" Gandalf asked politely. "Humph. Listen well. I am Grima, the advisor the great King Theoden trusts. If you have no pressing business, be gone and do not trouble the king's peace." He smirked as if he had done them a favor merely by speaking. Boromir frowned. The captain of the guard, who had recognized Boromir, the famous son of Denethor, steward of Gondor, leaned close and hissed. "That man has wormed his way into the king's favor with flattery and false loyalty. He silenced visitors before. Scouts who came in recently were gagged and imprisoned for offending him. If you have urgent matters, stand firm. Don't waste time with him." Gandalf shook his head. Theoden must be ill-advised to trust such a treacherous minister. Grima's face flamed. "How dare you?" he shouted. "Guards! Seize this beggar and lock him up." Without warning, Gandalf raised his staff. With a single, precise stroke, Grima was sent spinning and lay senseless on the ground. It was a sudden, unguarded strike. The gate guards drew their spears, pointing them at Gandalf and his companions. Grima might be loathed by many, but he held power at court. An assault on him demanded explanation. "What is the meaning of this disturbance?" A voice called from the hall. Theoden emerged, frowning as he took in the unconscious Grima and the 5 strangers. "Gandalf, Aragorn, Boromir, son of Denethor, and an elf and a dwarf. What is the meaning of this? Why is my advisor on the ground?" "You call such a man an advisor?" Boromir stepped forward. "I have heard the king is brave and wise, but I did not expect such misjudgment. A man like this would be seized and held in Gondor. He would have no place at council." Aragorn nodded in agreement. In Gondor's hard school, incompetence or treachery did not survive long. Such a man would be exposed in short order. Theoden reddened at being reproached, and he bristled. "You may not speak so of my counselor. I admit Grima is overbold, but he is skilled in administration and has saved me much trouble." "Saved trouble?" Gandalf cut in. "Does saving trouble include imprisoning a scout who had news of the front and preventing him from reporting?" Theoden's face grew grave. "That happened? If you believe him or me, choose," Gandalf snapped, losing his temper. "If you continue to let such a traitor hinder your affairs, I will see leeway put him to the test. Don't forget what happened in this very hall. I do not think your father would have borne it." Theoden looked at Gandalf's anger and agitation and felt helpless. "If you can truly bring leeway before me, I would be glad to stand aside." "I have seen him. He will return," Gandalf said. Theoden's eyes drifted, and then he added abruptly, "May I take back what I said?" Gandalf only glanced at him. There were more urgent matters. He prodded Grima with his staff until the man rolled aside, then walked with Theoden to the dungeon where the guard captain said the scout had been thrown. What they learned was dire. "The Isen River crossing has fallen," the scout said. "A vast army, men from the Black Land with many Uruk-hai, is moving on Helm's Deep. Prince Theodred is there, but the situation is bleak. We have less than 2,000 men." "How many are the enemy?" Theoden demanded. "Nearly 10 times our number," the scout answered. Theoden's heart sank. If Gandalf and the others had not come, this would have been kept from him. He ordered, "Put Grima in the deepest dungeon and gag him. I want no more of his treachery." "A wise choice," Gandalf said. "What are your plans?" "Relying on Theodred and fewer than 2,000 is no way to hold the deep," Theoden said. "We must muster an army at once to march to Helm's Deep." "Then move quickly," Aragorn urged. "If what the scout says is true, the Uruk host is already across the Isen. Even if we depart now, we may only reach them with little time to spare. There's no time for slow preparations." Far away in the Water City, Li Wei stood atop a wall and looked over the troops gathered below. He raised his head, and before he needed to speak, the men burst into a thunderous cheer. Even those who had not been called to the muster shouted. News of the miracle at Roadside Fort had spread through the city's quarters and beyond, and the people took it as a sign of blessing on their supreme leader. Their excitement was contagious. When the cheering had ebbed, Leeway silenced them with a raised hand. After half a day of recruitment and organizing, 4 legions, some 8,000 men, stood ready in the open square. That was not all. Portions of the Water City's forces were away along the distant southwestern coast, patrolling by sea. Taken together, the free city-states did not outnumber Gondor by population, but their mobilization was swift. A smaller population nevertheless produced a ready fighting force. "Let us go," Leeway ordered. "The road is long. We must move swiftly." Chapter 378, Road and Reputation. Meanwhile, in the Southron prison, a thin figure peered left and right. He glanced at the sleeping guard by the cell door. "He's asleep, Gollum," he hissed. Making a few deliberate noises to confirm the guard's slumber, Gollum clawed at the iron bars and painfully dislodged a small pebble from the floor. He glanced again at the guard, saw no movement, then aimed the pebble at the opposite wall, flicked it out through the bars, and used the rebound to strike the button beside the iron door. Click, creak, the iron door opened, free. Gollum slipped out, nerves taut, memorizing the terrain as he avoided patrols and made his way out of the prison. Not long after his escape, the guard by the gate woke up, stretched, and replaced the button with a lever that couldn't be so easily triggered by a thrown stone. No one pursued Gollum. They had been given strict instructions. If he became frantic and escaped, let him go. He might serve some purpose yet. A few days later, driven by his own cravings and the pull of the One Ring, Gollum found the 2 hobbits. After quarrels and confrontation, he joined their journey and swore, under Sam's sword, to guide Frodo. Bound by oath and circumstance, Gollum did what he could. He led them around crags, kept them clear of orcs, guided them through the dead marshes, and warned them not to be lured by the spirits that haunt the bogs. For a while, the 3 made a surprisingly functional party, though habit and temperament still bred small quarrels. "Hopeless," Sam muttered as he stirred a pot of rabbit stew in the green of Ithilien near the Black Gate. "Rabbit's best eaten this way. It's a pity we haven't any potatoes. Then you'd know what it is to have good food and a full belly at the same time." "Pah," Gollum made a face. "Waste of good meat, Gollum." "You don't understand," Sam said. "Golden fried chips, a nice pan-fried fish. Ah, you couldn't resist a treat like that even if you tried. Heh, when it's all over, maybe I'll even cook you a decent meal. Then you'll see how miserable you've been living." "You're the miserable one, you fat, wasteful hobbit. Eat it raw, Gollum." They bickered until Frodo, frowning, waved them to silence. "Quiet, Sam. What is it? There's an army." "Who?" "Sauron's," Gollum whispered, eyes narrowing. "They're dark men, Haradrim from the south, called up to Mordor. Soon they'll be invading. Very soon. Very soon." "What day?" Sam asked. Gollum was lost in his grim vision. The day Gondor and Rohan are dragged into darkness. He shivered and for a moment forgot to make his habitual sound. "Gollum, we should go," Frodo said, rising at once. Then the situation shifted. Arrows whistled from the grass as longbows appeared. Hidden men struck cleanly and quickly. The Haradrim were cut down, except for 2 great war beasts. The riders on them were shot before they could even tell where the attack had come from. A body thudded by Sam's foot. He stared at the fallen man, eyes staring, and wondered, what was his name? Where did he come from? Had he been cruel in his heart or compelled to leave home? All the thoughts passed in an instant. Danger forced itself back into his mind. Sam fled with Frodo and Gollum. Their flight was short-lived. The Ithilien Rangers had long since noticed the suspicious trio. They were overtaken, captured, blindfolded, and brought to a hidden stronghold for questioning. Their weapons were taken to prevent accidents. When an attentive ranger saw Sam's short sword, he sent it to the assault commander, Faramir, brother of Boromir. Faramir read the small inscription on the blade, "Forged by Leeway, gifted to those who embark on a distant expedition." Seeing that name and the words "distant expedition," a realization formed in Faramir's mind. These hobbits might indeed be on a secret, important mission. "They are more than they seem," he said. "Untie them, return their belongings, bring them here. I have questions." Frodo and Sam were brought in. In a few brief exchanges, they learned who stood before them, Boromir's brother. Faramir asked bluntly, as if following some premonition, Tell me, Hobbit, does your mission concern Isildur's bane? How did you? Frodo began. Sam! Frodo grabbed his companion, but it was too late. Sam's earlier words had informed them. Frodo felt helpless. My brother Boromir went north for it. Do you seek it as well? Faramir asked. No. Frodo shook his head. Even if that thing lay at my feet, I would not take it. Even if Minas Tirith fell and I alone could save it, I would not use the Dark Lord's weapon. I do not desire such a victory. Faramir listened. I know there are things mortals are not meant to touch. The Grey Wizard and the Lord of the Northern Lands have warned me. I have reason. At that moment, fate played its trick. The One Ring slipped free and hung on its chain against Frodo's chest. Faramir's gaze locked onto it. The test had come. So it is with you, he breathed, staring. Frodo and Sam held their breath, pale with fear. Had he been like Boromir, all would be lost. Keep it safe, Frodo. Faramir's voice pulled the moment back. His eyes were clear again. Show it to no one, neither to me nor to any other. He knelt and took Frodo's hand so the ring could be hidden in his palm. Sam, earnest, added, You have shown great character. Faramir smiled without making much of an answer. The mood lightened. Then another catch was brought in. Gollum found catching fish by a pond. Faramir frowned. I have heard of this unpleasant creature. Since he trespassed in Gondor's lands, I must deal with him. Frodo rushed to explain. He was once a ring-bearer. He is my guide to Mordor. He must lead me to destroy the ring. Faramir sheathed his sword. Gollum's life was spared, but only conditionally. He was forced to swear an oath of loyalty to the mission and was allowed to travel within Ithilien only under close watch. If he left Frodo and Sam or broke his oath, the assault rangers would execute him at once. It was a safeguard for the hobbits. Go now, Frodo, Faramir said, blessing them and supplying food for their journey. For a time, the road through Ithilien promised to be easier. Would it last? Scouts brought urgent news. Osgiliath is under attack. Reinforcements are needed. The enemy is tens of thousands strong, and ring-wraiths lead them. Prepare to depart. Go to their aid. Faramir made his choice and parted from Frodo and the others. So their matter, which had begun with an argument over raw versus cooked food, reached a temporary close. Elsewhere, others fretted over food of another kind, dish neither fully raw nor fully cooked. Éowyn carried a pot of soup toward the road to Helm's Deep and offered it. I made some soup. Would you like some? Gimli hurried past. No, thanks, he grunted, though it wasn't meant for him. Éowyn walked to Aragorn. Would you like some? It's not much, but it will warm you. Aragorn eyed the pot. He had traveled long and could cook well. He recognized a technique. This recipe comes from my grandfather Sengel, Éowyn said. He learned it from Li Wei, leader of the northern folk. Oh, Aragorn's interest was piqued. He had tasted Li Wei's cooking and knew nothing from his hands was poor. He took a large bowl eagerly. Éowyn beamed. Finally, someone appreciated her effort. Drink quickly. Aragorn smiled, lifted the spoon, and took a big mouthful. Slowly, his smile vanished. What's wrong? How is it? Éowyn asked, worried. He nodded. It's a bit hot. Soup dribbled from his mouth. Gimli, returning then, roared with laughter. Ha! A man who has felled hundreds of orcs now finds a bowl of soup too hot. How have I never noticed you were so delicate, he taunted. Aragorn clenched his fists, wanting to punch the dwarf, but thought better of it. I hear dwarves are not afraid of the forge. They don't even flinch if they touch an iron pot red hot. Why not try this soup? I'm not hungry, Gimli said then. Intrigued by Éowyn's claim it was a technique of Sengel's and Li Wei's, he accepted a bowl. He drank too fast and choked, spitting soup into his beard. Aragorn, this, Gimli sputtered. I'm saying dwarves are indeed tough. It's just that the throat and stomach are more delicate than the skin, Gimli recovered. Legolas drifted up silently. Dwarves are impatient. They gulp and clear their plates in one bite, chewing loud as cattle. Then elves must be most elegant, Gimli shot back. Legolas lifted his chin, mildly offended. Humph, we eat with poise. Éowyn pressed the bowl forward. Try it, Li Wei's method. Legolas, intrigued, drank carefully, savoring a small mouthful. He swallowed, feeling a pang of homesickness. Why does our Mirkwood prince look so melancholic? Boromir asked as he approached, having seen the little group and come to see what was happening. Nothing, just eating, Legolas said, offering his bowl. Give me a bowl, then. I'm hungry, Boromir grinned. Legolas handed it over. Taste it. It's a skill Li Wei taught. Boromir accepted gratefully. "Thank you." He lifted the pot and drank. On the wild borderlands of Anorion, far to the south, Leeway, leading his host, suddenly sneezed. His horse stumbled at the motion. "You all right?" someone asked. "Fine," he said. He rubbed his nose, amused and a little rueful. "It just feels as if part of my reputation has taken an irreparable hit." Chapter 379, Welcome Back Hiss. A vicious roar tore through the air. A ringwraith drifted over the plains of Rohan, then paused above a single point and descended slowly. "I can sense them, the living, their souls," it hissed. A large army had just passed that way, heading for Helm's Deep. Ringwraiths cannot see as men do, but they perceive the world by other means. They read the traces of living souls left in the land of the dead. Reinforcements from Adoras had moved toward the deep. There was only one defensible stronghold large enough to receive them, Hornburg. That, at least, was something the Nazgul could calculate. These new troops would number no more than 2,000, roughly the same as the force that had once defended the Eisen River crossing. Even adding the men already in Hornburg, Rohan would not muster 4,000 defenders. 20,000 against 4,000. Advantage Mordor, advantage Isengard. The Ringwraith mounted its fell beast again and gave a command from the sky. The enemy army moved swiftly, close on the heels of the reinforcements, pressing inexorably toward Helm's Deep. Both sides raced against time. By dusk, the Rohan reinforcements and 4 Ringwraith riders arrived at Hornburg first. Theoden received Theodred in a council room. Father and son spoke in low, urgent tones. "I failed to hold the crossing, Father," Theodred said. "It is not your fault," Theoden replied, looking at his only son with a tired forgiveness. To hold in such a situation, one would need to fight 10,000 alone, or have every man face 10 foes at once. Retreating to the deep was right, Theodred conceded. It saved lives. As for the enemy, stretching as far as the eye can see, Theodred trailed off. "Let them come," Theoden said. There was no tremor of fear in his voice. "The defenses of Hornburg are formidable. No matter how many of them press us, they will break like water upon rock." "But the orcs in that army are not like ordinary orcs," Theodred said quietly. "I have seen it." Gimli, listening from a shadowed corner, grunted. "They are not mere disordered orcs. They are Uruk-hai, thick armor, broad shields." "I am no stranger to warfare, dwarf lord," Theoden answered firmly. "I know what Uruk-hai are." Aragorn, standing near the table, spoke up. "We should ask for help. Send messengers." "To whom?" Theoden asked, glancing at Legolas and Gimli. "Elves? Dwarves?" "Who would spare troops now?" Boromir asked. The question hung heavy in the room. "The Free City-States," Aragorn said. "They might come." Theoden's face darkened. "The Free City-States are staunch allies. Once, they might not have stood aside. But you must have heard the rumors. Leeway was struck down by the Dark Lord, missing in the North Wastes. The elves say he is no longer in this world. The Free Cities have thrown their forces to the north and are confronting the Black Gate at the bend of the Nanhe River. They have not attacked, for inside Mordor there are more than 100,000 troops." "They tie up more than half Mordor's forces in the north," Aragorn said, "making it hard for them to send reinforcements here. And the march from the Black Gate to Hornburg is long. How could they possibly arrive in time?" "And Gondor?" Theoden asked, turning to Boromir. "There is less hope there. Before I learned of this army, I considered rallying support for Gondor. Their beacons remain unlit. Their steward does not place trust in our word." Boromir's jaw tightened. He said nothing. The matter was complicated beyond ease. "We cannot raise more men here," Theoden continued. "Eomer at Eastmark and the cavalry cannot be spared. If the eastern borders fall once our cavalry leaves, we would not face merely the hostile folk of Isengard and their Uruk-hai. We would draw Mordor in as well." He drew a deep breath to steady the constriction in his throat. Then he glanced over his shoulder. "Where is Gandalf? Has he gone?" "He left partway through," someone answered. "Where to?" "West, farther west than the Eisen crossing. He is likely riding toward the Water City." Theoden nodded slowly. "That was his plan, yes, but I do not expect aid to arrive unless—" He hesitated. "Unless," Aragorn prompted. "Unless he can drag Leeway back from beyond the world," Theoden finished with a faint, grim humor. "That is a fantasy," Aragorn said bluntly. "Give up that fancy, Lord Aragorn," Gimli added. "We must fight alone." Theoden's sigh was small but resolute. He moved toward the parapet without looking back. Let those who can still fight take up arms. Night fell, not as everyone had hoped. Preparations continued in the cold dark as men and dwarves and elves readied themselves for what might come. Far to the west, not far from the ridges of Erebor, Gandalf rode Swift Shadow, the king of horses, into a glittering host of silver and white. For a moment he was startled, then his surprise turned to joy. The free city-states had moved of their own accord, after all. Before he could call out, he saw who rode at their head. "Who are you?" he asked, at first in incredulous greeting. "Are your eyes so poor you cannot tell me?" came the bright answer. Gandalf smiled. "My eyes are well enough. I only ask, are you still you?" Leeway laughed softly. "Are you still you?" Gandalf blinked. "Of course I am me." "Then I am still me." "You truly are?" Gandalf asked, puzzled. Leeway grinned. "Even if you were not yourself, I would still be me." The soldiers who heard them shifted uneasily. The leaders had met and were already trading cryptic riddles that set their men whispering. "Perhaps they talk of the self," one murmured. "A philosophical debate between friends." Gandalf pressed. "Who are you truly?" Leeway's expression turned serious for an instant, then lightened. "Different from whatever you might imagine. Perhaps when your task is done, you will understand a part of it. For now I will say this, the I that stands here is whole, no less, no forgetting, no absence. I am Leeway. Leeway is me. No other name fits." Gandalf nodded slowly. "All right, I understand. And one thing we agree on no matter who we are," Leeway said, searching Gandalf's face. "What is that? We are still friends." Gandalf's face broke into a genuine smile. "Of course, why make so much of it then?" Leeway stepped close. "Welcome back." "You as well," Gandalf answered. Chapter 380, The Darkness of the Tide. On the walls of Hornburg, soldiers stood in neat ranks, eyes fixed on the wide valley to the north. If the enemy came, it would be from that direction. Night had fallen. The old, the weak, the women and children of Westfold are all in Helm's Deep. They've been placed in the glittering caves, Theodred reported to Theoden from the highest point of the wall. "Fortunately, our provisions are ample. In recent years, the free city-states have given much aid to the surrounding lands, so supplies are the one thing we lack least. We can hold here for a very, very long time." "We will hold." Theoden gripped his sword. His voice was steady and sure. "The enemy is not to be underestimated, but our fighters are no mere rabble." No elders or children had been forced to man the walls tonight. All stood ready, but calm. Gimli, who had faced Uruk-hai and known their viciousness, grinned half-jokingly. "Lots of them are barely lads, but by the look of them they're stronger than most of their age." Aragorn tapped his shoulder, signaling silence, and looked over the parapet. "They're coming." Legolas, Boromir, Aragorn, Gimli, each stood on the wall, waiting for the assault. Faint flickers crawled across the distant mountainside, torches in the dark, the enemy pouring into the valley. Thunder rolled, briefly lighting ferocious faces beneath the storm clouds. Boromir, who had ridden the troubled roads between Osgiliath and Calenardon, was the most composed. "I've seen this before," he said. "Those lands never know peace." Gimli snorted. "Don't talk about your family business." He looked up as a dark rider circled on a fell beast, one of the ring-wraiths. "I know those," Boromir added to Gimli. Gimli thought of the One Ring, the way such a thing could bend powerful beings to a will. No wonder Boromir coveted it. A thing like that would change everything, forcing even the Nazgul to bow. The valley filled with a shadowing tide. Then, with the crack of rain and the flash of lightning, the assault began. "Fire!" Theoden commanded. "Fire!" Theodred echoed. A single practiced note and the archers let loose. The three of the four companions who used bows followed suit. Legolas, Aragorn, Boromir, while Gimli could only watch from below the parapet. Arrows fell in a black rain, but the enemy pressed on. Their numbers were too great. The valley seemed to have no end. Swarms of black-clad figures surged at the walls, hauling hooks and ladders, while defenders poured down everything they had. Corpses began to heap at the base of the wall. Gimli sprang up, axe crashing down on an Uruk who thought he'd found a gap. "Thought you could find a dwarf, did you?" he grunted. "Turn! Defend the gate!" a voice shouted from the highest point. The four fighting friends looked down. Along the sloping approach, a host was making for the city gates, dropping between the rocky turns where catapults and boulders had less sweep. Defenders rolled great stones and sent fresh volleys of arrows. Wave after wave was thrown back. The Nazgûl swooped low toward the gate, their fell beasts shrieking in the storm. Their presence spread terror. Many flinched and fell silent. At that moment, Theodred, son of the king, stepped forward with sword raised and cried, "Have courage!" His shout steadied them. Men clenched teeth and answered with steel, rallying their hope. But the enemy had already driven forward. Arrows forced the Nazgûl to wheel back, and at the gate a set of tall black landers had come with great tree trunks to batter the doors. Uruk-hai held massive black shields, protecting the ram crew from flanks and from above. The gates of Hornburg, though stout, were timber. The repeated blows began to splinter the wood. Aragorn, Boromir, and Theodred exchanged a look. "Warriors with me," Aragorn called. A small squad gathered and took a hidden side path down the slope. They struck hard and fast. The ram crew were unprepared. Men dropped their logs and wheeled to meet the attack. Shield walls turned. But the three leaders were at their head. They drew swords together and tore the Uruk shield wall apart. Men were cut and shoved, rolling down into the crush. For a while, the sortie cleared the gate. Another wave came, however, and the defenders' losses mounted. "The gate's been damaged. We must fall back," someone cried. "Retreat," came the order. They pulled back fast, but the sky above had other plans. The Nazgûl swooped low again. Theodred, bringing up the rear, was nearly caught by a swipe of terrible talons when Aragorn shouted, "Legolas!" An arrow flew, a single silver streak shot from the elven prince, and struck the fell beast in the flank. It reared, bellowed, and broke off, wounded but still able to fly. Legolas let out a quiet sigh. By the angle he had not been able to catch the wing itself. It was a pity, but for now, the beast was driven away.